Hi guys, I publish many novels in our Telegram. Each novel has its own exclusive Telegram channel packed with all chapters in high-quality audio. Plus, if the novel is ongoing, you'll get all future updates and releases automatically, no extra cost, no monthly payment. Just make a one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi and enjoy unlimited access forever. Don't miss out on the ultimate audiobook experience. Links in the description. If you can't support me financially, just like and subscribe our videos. Thank you guys, your support means a lot. And as always, enjoy Shadow. Chapter 464, Eternal Lord. The carriage slowly made its way through the mountain, finally approaching a giant crystal palace that was in the very center of the huge storm that surrounded the entire city. As soon as the carriage stopped, Victor stepped down, sighing, and looked up at the amazing palace with its high crystal walls and spiraling glass-like towers. It had a strange Gothic-like architecture but with a hint of elvish influence. What? Impressed? Lyra jumped down from her seat and said. She was trying hard to forget the thoughts that she had earlier about what had happened with Niga. Yeah. It is just that my life is going a lot into the fantasy genre lately. Fantasy porn to be exact, he said, shaking his head. Hopefully he would manage to pull the scam perfectly and return safely to his world. Lyra didn't understand what he meant. Hey, you are that guy? Someone suddenly exclaimed, making him look back and notice a youthful, pretty, energetic girl walking from the side in a night suit. Do I know you? He asked with a frown. No, but I saw you in the competition the other day. I thought you died because you were not in the award ceremony, she said as she inspected him and his flashy golden tiger suit. You are that guy who oiled the suit of armor, right? She said. Victor frowned. He finally remembered when he saw her. She seemed to have been the star of that competition or something. He noticed her checking him out when he was oiling that armor but never met her inside because he was guided into the bad boy's pathway at some point while she had probably been led into a safer path. He squinted his eyes as he appraised her. She was not bad at all, but not amazing. The class was Wind Knight and the level was 40. Above the standard for a freshly appointed knight. The only strange thing was that she didn't have a predefined fate. Strange? Oh. Yes. Hi, he said after some thoughts, flashing a smile similar to those he had seen Tom use. He might need to keep an eye on this one. Pin, what are you doing here? Lyra yelled violently for some reason, startling the poor girl who was about to fall for her pervert brother-in-law. It's you, Lady Lyra. I am sorry, I didn't recognize you. Pin quickly bowed down. She overlooked Lyra before because she was not wearing her armor but was wearing a simple sundress with her hair down. Apparently, today was her vacation. I am here with my master. He told me to wait outside, she clarified nervously. Your master? Lyra asked. Pin was one of the best knights she trained. After completing the ceremony, she should have been chosen by one of the top brass to be his or her disciple. Still, Lyra, who had to leave for an emergency mission, didn't know who took her in. Yes, Duke Stormbringer, she nodded. We were just returning from the Wind Cave and he was going to introduce me to Prince Lizzer, but for some reason he got a letter then hurried here and I had been waiting for 7 hours, she said quickly in a respectful voice. This girl was clearly the talkative type. Hearing her, Victor froze. She was meant to meet Lizzer. Wait. She was cute enough to make any guy other than Victor, who was immune thanks to Lily, want to court her, and from the way she talked and seemed impressed by his tiger suit, she was clearly a lower caste commoner. Adding those two facts together, the result can be easily figured out. A disaster. Victor could tell from his brief meeting with Lizzer that the guy was a snake. Then, could it be that by framing Lizzer as a demon, he might have changed her fate? Victor squinted his eyes. But why didn't fate change to death by demons like the others? How did this work? Remembering everyone he knew, he couldn't really tell. Those close to him seemed to have had their fate obscured due to his class, and this was the first time he really observed someone whom his actions might have affected but was not close enough to him. Looking at her, he felt that he was about to understand something there. Hey! Why are you spacing out? Quick, follow me. Lyra, who felt something was wrong watching Victor keeping his eyes on Pin, yelled, grabbing him and then dragging him inside. No idea why she was angry. He was her perverted brother-in-law after all. Yes. She didn't want him to betray her sister after all. Yes. This is definitely it. You are already a married guy, damn it, she whispered angrily, remembering what happened with Niga. Damn pervert. And? A man can marry more than one wife. Shut up. She interrupted him. Try not to get killed inside, she said as she guided him through the palace's heavily guarded gate. Those guards didn't dare to stop her. As soon as he stepped inside, he felt it. Warning. Conditional edicts apply. Level restrict to level 1. Instant death skills are forbidden. Space skills are forbidden. Appraisal skills are forbidden. Illusion and disguise skills are forbidden. Demons disintegrate S. Sex is forbidden. Do you want to allow this edict to affect you? Yes, no. He pressed no but quickly disguised his status to match its effect as his mind raced. That sex is forbidden effect was really thoughtful. He had heard so many scandals in the Von Krone Palace back then that he knew that it was the right thing to do. The question he had was whether it would stop it from going in or would it stop the job from being completed. He was tempted to try it with Aerith for scientific reasons. Nah. Too risky. But on the other hand, it might make it more interesting. But he promised himself to be careful. But yet again, Aerith might like the thrill. You noticed it, right? How you became weak, Lyra said with a smirk interrupting his perverted thoughts. This is the Lord's power, she said proudly. Shard Setter Nimra Stormlord does not have enough authority. Edict effect failed. X7. Ah. Yeah, Victor said as he squinted his eyes and looked at the notification. There was an edict shard here. Could it be like the ones he got? He remembered something about them being special to each world before. Lyra nodded proudly, then slowly guided Victor past the knights and the maids throughout the palace. She seemed to know this place well. Finally, after 10 minutes of climbing different crystal stairs, they reached a grand mirror-like blue polished door guarded by two fully armored giants who held a long sword each, resting its tip on the ground underneath them. If not for the slight movement in their chests as they breathed, Vicar would have thought they were statues. Not really, he could have praised them after all. Azalaria Mygar Defna. Class, Knight. Abnormal status. Greater Storm Lord Blessing SS. Storm Slave SS. Level 1041. Authority 50 plus 55. Bloodline, Storm Giant 100%. Fate power, B. Predefined fate, get raped then die at the of Zifra the Great. Wait, get raped? That Zifra guy has some interesting fetishes. Those two giants. No, giantesses were each 25 feet tall. Could it be that little Zifra was so big no one could take it? How big did he have to be? What a disturbing thought. I brought Victor von Weiss as requested for the audience, Lyra said as she reported in a solemn voice, bowing slightly with her hand on her chest in a knight's salute. He may enter, you will wait, one of the two guards said as she pushed the giant door slightly ajar to reveal a strange bluish mist that seemed to hide everything inside. Lyra nodded. Be careful, she squeezed her little fist and whispered as she watched Victor walk in. Sure, he said as he walked past the door and diapered into the shimmering blue mist before the door was closed again. This is a glorious day for all of us, for today I will unveil my fifth, 5-year plan that will change the course of history. The president said addressing the army of soldiers and dignitaries standing beneath the stage. In addition to the cameras that surrounded the stage. Are you sure this will work? Mona asked nervously as she looked at Alpha, not paying any attention to the stupid speech that she watched Alpha write the previous day with the twins' help. No one will be hurt? They were hiding in a press van to the side of the large square. For the 10th fucking time. Don't worry, Alpha said angrily. Pay attention to the camera. Lily began moving, she told the girl to her side, making Mona look to the side in a hurry. There on the far side of the square, a man was running while dressed in drags. Lily, who was wearing a veil, was running after him with a sword after jumping out of a window from a nearby hotel. Make sure to capture it, Alpha said. Focus on the guy's face. Roger that, the slutty girl operating the camera said as she professionally pointed the camera at the young man who was screaming for help. Stop, some soldiers yelled as they noticed Lily. Hey! Stop or we will open fire, one shouted as a group of guards surrounded them. Then. Be ready, Alpha said as she pressed a button. Bang. All of a sudden, the stage under the president exploded, turning the guy into minced meat. Everyone was sent to the ground then. SWOP. A large crimson vortex exploded from under the explosion, wooing the entire square. Then it shrank back, leaving the square intact but empty as all the people there have disappeared except for a certain miserable girl, that is. What? I even fucking opened the gate myself, Alpha couldn't help but yell before finally noticing the notification above her head. Dungeon opened. Congratulations, you are the one who discovered and opened this dungeon. Dungeon discovering reward. 1. Dungeon map. 2. 10 free allocate. Granting reward error, not in the dungeon. Error log. 0444648998400000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000000kLords cannot enter the boundary zone. Eh? Lords? Alpha was flabbergasted. Akaichi. A short chapter, but the meeting with the Lord is taking more than expected to make right, and I didn't want to make you wait. Enjoy. Chapter 465, Karmic Retribution. Stepping out of the fog, Victor found himself in a large imperial court that was built out of marble in the same Gothic elvish style of the palace below, with huge lanterns floating in midair shooting strange lightning streaks into the sky. It gave the entire hall a bluish tint. And yes, the hall didn't have any walls or ceilings despite the large Gothic arcs extending across the sky above, being supported by long decorated columns that were scattered in a seemingly random pattern around the hall. It was as if this entire court was suspended in midair in the middle of a huge storm, yet for some strange reason he couldn't feel a breeze, as if he was inside. In the center of the court, a stairway extended up for about 10 steps, and on top of it was a throne where a woman that was veiled by blue mist sat. The Storm Lord. Name, Nimra Allstorm, sure. Level, 310,430. Class, Storm Lord, U. Subclass, Magician, AA. Affinity, Storm. Affinity rank, Triangle, 100%, +2. Abnormal status. The Eldar Death Curse, SSS, your life will slowly dwindle until you die. The last threat effect, Death Resilient X. You can never die due to the effect of only one type of attack or curse. Status. Authority, 32,277. Strength, 826,884. Agility, 828,173. Intelligence, 828,413. Luck, 49. Charm, 69. Order points, 5084112. Skills. Error retrieving data, Lord database field connection is severed. Fate. Error retrieving data, Lord field unavailable. Bloodline. Ice Leviathan SS awakened. Equipment. Last Thread, X. Storm Armor SSS. Eye of the Storm SSS. Blurwood Staff SSS. Reflection Tiara SSS. Hyper Defense Talisman SSS. Appraiser Eyeglass A. Healing Earrings A. Oh, this woman was twice as strong as that Sun Lord. And he was right about the curse. And that thread, it must have been why she is still alive, literally hanging by a thread. It was like those artifacts in video games that left you with 1 health point after a deadly attack. He wanted it. Too bad he had no way of taking it from the Storm Lord. He didn't dare to look any longer, so he slowly moved his eyes down to observe the 9 people standing respectfully below the throne. The first 3 were people he knew. The first was Aerith, who shot him an apologetic look for embroiling him into this. The second was Rosette, who was threatening him with her eyes to act properly. The third was the old librarian, Germana. Next were the 4 young men who were with Lizard that day acting as his lackeys. They were shaking out of fear as they stood to the side. The last 2, of whom he didn't know, were a strange man who seemed to be Lizard's father and a strange woman who stood to the side silently with a smirk on her face as if she found the entire situation amusing. Name, Lazarus Stormbringer. Level, 640. Class, Storm Archwizard SSS. Subclass, Chef D. Abnormal status. Storm Lord's Disciple 2nd. Authority, 80+20. Bloodline. Moon Elf AA. Fate. Fate's power, S. Scion. Defined fate. Error Science has no defined fate's world rule. Destiny list, 10 order points to unveil. Next. Name, Atma Stormborn. Level, 1471. Class, Storm Avatar SSS. Abnormal status. Storm Lord's Disciple 1st. Authority, 150+20. Bloodline. Hail Peacock SS. Fate. Fate's power, S. Scion. Defined fate. Error Science has no defined fate's world rule. Destiny list, 10 order points to unveil. The Lord's Disciples. Victor inspected everyone casually as he walked toward the throne, finally noticing a glass coffin in front of it. In it is the corpse of the late Lizard, naked with only his private parts covered by a white piece of silk. His body seemed to have been cut into 5 pieces and sewn back together. Keeping his eyes on it, Victor sighed as he reached a spot near Aerith, then bowed down according to the protocol Lyra taught him along the way here. Victor White greets the Storm Lord, he said respectfully. He could hear Aerith beside him sigh in relief after seeing that he was keeping his manners. He should never speak unless he was spoken to. The Storm Lord inspected him for an entire minute before speaking. You may rise, she said. Her voice, although authoritative, was somehow weak. Victor, whose vision was being filled with warnings about someone appraising him, didn't act suspiciously as he stood up. He just made sure that his disguise was working just fine. Now that everyone who was at the scene is here, you may present your case, the Storm Lord said. Your Lordship, Lazarus was the one who spoke. Let me say it in simple words. My son was definitely a victim of a vicious plot, he said passionately. It must have all been Rosette's plan to get rid of my son. Lies, Rosette defended herself. All the witnesses have already explained what happened there. Your son was a victim of demonic possession. It is out of pity that Aerith didn't cut him into 1,000,000 pieces when he tried to self-destruct. Then why did the demon possess my son out of everyone else there? Lazarus asked. Your son took the book on his own accord there. Everyone would testify to that, Rosette defended, making Germana, the librarian, nod. Lizard dropped the book and caused it to be damaged. This might have been the condition for the possession, she added. Good, then why would my son scream and drop the book in the first place? Lazarus snapped. No one had a reply for that. This was one of the points no one could answer. Maybe it was the book testing him to see if he was fit to be possessed, Rosette suggested, but it was clear from her tone that she was unconvinced. It could be, but it could also be a plot, Lazarus said, walking toward the glass coffin and gesturing to his son. Lady Rosette, if I may ask, other than attacking my son with a sword, did your daughter deal any other damage to him? No, Rosette replied. He was using his storm steps perfectly to escape all my attacks. As soon as Aerith's team arrived and we cornered him, he tried to self-destruct to jump to another body, so she had to use my strongest attack to kill him, she replied, looking at her daughter, who was ordered to remain silent. This is all according to protocol. I know, Lazarus said, grabbing the cloth covering his son's private parts and pulling it away. Can you explain this then? He asked, making everyone look and almost gasp. The core's private parts were swollen 3 times the normal size. Your son is a real hunk. Atma, the Lord's first disciple, couldn't help but chuckle. Lazarus just shot her a glare before he looked back at the Lord. My son must have suffered some kind of attack on his private parts. You see, he always had this medical condition that caused any bruises he suffered to immediately inflame. Oh, the Lord was interested. Hearing him, Victor began to sweat a little. Damn science and their luck, even his son's medical condition worked in his favor. Shit. He should have been more careful. This might be the cause of his yell at the library. The reason why he dropped the book, Lazarus explained as he let everyone inspect the corpse. It could also be the effect of the demon's possession. Bodily modification, although rare, is not unheard of, Rosette interjected. Body modifications wouldn't cause his reproductive organs break, Lazarus snapped, making everyone look at the corpse's private parts again where Lazarus was pointing. It was clearly broken. Victor sweated more, but he disguised it away quickly. He should have kicked him a little softer, but he was not sure about the demon's pain tolerance. Why was this not in the autopsy report? Rosette asked with a frown. I asked them to withhold it temporarily until the end of the investigation, Lazarus snapped, clearly showing that he had suspected Rosette from the beginning as he took a few papers from his storage ring and presented them to his lord. I didn't want anyone to try and tamper with the evidence, he added, hinting at something. Rosette wanted to curse, but she held her words. The Storm Lord, who said nothing, waved her hand, making the papers levitate on their own, then head straight toward her where they spread in midair in front of her, allowing her to read them. It is true, she finally said. This changes nothing. Rosette interjected. Madame Germana was there, and so were your son's lackeys. Aerith didn't attack your son before he became a demon. Aerith didn't. But someone did, Lazarus said, pointing at Victor. Me? Victor asked in shock. He figured that this guy was suspecting him from the moment he mentioned the injury. The question was why. You are the prime suspect, Lazarus said. Elaborate, the Storm Lord said. First of all, let me set things straight. This young man named Victor White is supposed to be from a minor noble family, but this is all a lie, right? Lazarus asked. He's a distant relative of Lady Ariana, Rosette explained. I used to date his father, she hid nothing. The Storm Lord nodded behind her veil. Rosette must have told her everything about Victor beforehand. What does all of this have to do with your son? Rosette asked. Everything. Lazarus spat. You might have thought you had fooled me by that report of Lyra arresting him and then removing his powers before throwing him into the competition, but look, I have acquired the reports of what happened there, he said, taking another stack of documents. Victor clearly had all his powers in there. Many witnesses would testify to how he always seemed to be somewhere else when anything attacked him. He was clearly using some disguise or illusion skill. This might be what he used against my son, he said. It was all your plot. Victor froze. Although Lazarus got things wrong, he was right about a few things. Shit. This time the Lord didn't grab the documents. She already knew that thanks to Rosette informing her about the talismans and Victor's situation. According to all of this, I believe he was the one who attacked him at the library and caused him to drop the book, Lazarus spat. Everyone paused. Victor did have his powers during the competition. But this is unimportant now, Rosette finally said. Everything else you said is just speculation on your side. He doesn't even have a disguise skill. It could be an artifact, Lazarus spat. Still, you have no evidence, she said. Who said I don't? He spat, taking out a strange little crystal hammer from his storage ring. Dharmatic crystal hammer, AX, system locked. Every action has an equal and an opposite reaction. Effect, force karmic retribution. Conditions. You need to have 10 times the authority of the hammer's target. The payback percentage depends on the energy expended when activating the hammer. Locked state. All payments are imaginary. Only works for bodily injuries. Can only be used 3 times every year. What the Inspecting the hammer, Victor had a bad premonition. Shit. It didn't take him a lot to realize what this was about. He immediately started thinking of a way to escape. Your lordship, might I get permission to use this artifact here? He turned to the Storm Lord and asked. Granted, the Lord, who clearly knew what this was, said. This is? Rosette asked. It is an old artifact. Simply put, it has the ability to force the settlement of a debt, Lazarus said. For example, if someone punched you, you could hit yourself with it and that person would get his punch back, he said, and before his words settled in, he swiftly took the hammer and hit his son's chest before anyone could realize what he meant. Aerith screamed in pain as she fell to her knees, touching her body as if she was about to die. On her, 5 ethereal blue sword marks appeared mirroring those on Lizard's corpse. Aerith, Rosette screamed as she wanted to grab her weapon. Relax, the effect is imaginary, the Storm Lord said. Ah. What? Rosette gasped as she inspected Aerith's body. As the ethereal marks disappeared, there were no signs of injury, but the girl was hurting, grasping her chest and abdomen in pain as if they were real. Yes. It is all imaginary, but the pain is real. This was Erdia's debt to my son, Lazarus said with a smug voice. Now. I wonder who would be next, he said as he grabbed the hammer again and hit Lizard's body again. No, Aerith yelled for some reason, but no one cared as they looked at Victor. Bam. The hammer connected. Pam. The ethereal mark didn't appear on Victor, but on Lazarus' face, it was as if he was slapped by an invisible hand. What the ignoring the pain on his face, Lazarus screamed again and hit his son's corpse. Pam. This time a kick on Lazarus's ass, sending him rolling to the ground. Hey! Little Laz, you really like to beat your son's face, don't you? Atma was the one who said it as she smirked. Some of Lizard's lackeys who stood to the other side were about to laugh, but they didn't dare to. Ah! Lazarus, who quickly stood up angrily, was left speechless. What did this mean? It meant that from the time he beat up his son to the time Aerith killed him, he was not attacked at all. How could that be? That was the question everyone had, and the only answer was, it was really all just a coincidence. Well, it was not that simple. Moments earlier, when Victor saw the hammer, he activated all his senses earlier to find a loophole. He saw what happened with Aerith. The moment the hammer struck, a red thread appeared between Aerith and Lizard's corpse, then the thread burned up rapidly, and as if it was a rubber band that was let loose, it left Lizard and struck back at Aerith, making 5 imaginary sword marks appear on her body before she screamed in pain. He knew that thread. It was a fate thread. The hammer. Maybe it was the fate artifact he was after. But other than worrying about it for now, he had to worry about himself. He quickly used his disguise to hide what he was doing as he squinted his eyes and activated his Eyes of Destiny skill, looking at Lizard and making sure not to glance at the Stormlord just in case. He could see it between the myriad of fading threads the corpse had, a red thread connecting both of them. He instinctively knew that the moment Lazarus hit his son's corpse again, this thread would snap and hit him in the balls. Although he might be able to disguise it, if nothing happened it would raise many questions. And he was not 100% sure he would be able to fool the Lord. Watching Lazarus prepare to strike the hammer again, he knew he had to act fast. He needed to sever that thread. The question was how he had no such skill. Unless, without thinking about it, he used his Devour skill to target the thread. The thread flashed once and then turned into dust that was sucked by Victor. Devour activated. Target fate thread. 8 9 7 9 8 4 6 5 4 5 4 3 2 4 5 A off 4 88 EX 1 2 5 8 8 5 6 5 1 2 8 8. Devoured. 2 experience points gained. At the same time the notification appeared, Victor could feel his connection to Lizard grow weaker, as if they were complete strangers. No wait, they were strangers to begin with. It was as if the memory of what happened earlier was something Victor watched on TV and not something he did. Boom. The hammer struck a moment later, and without Victor's thread, the one that activated was the next one, chronologically. The one of Lazarus slapping his son that morning. Akaichi. Sorry for the delay. Enjoy. Chapter 466, Pervert. After Lazarus failed to prove his point, the Stormlord's court was engulfed in an eerie silence. Lazarus, is that all you have? The Stormlord finally said after a few moments. Ah! My lord. Please give me one more chance to. Enough, your son's death was a coincidence, she interrupted. But there must be something else. What about his broken? He began to speak, barely containing his anger. You have already shown that it didn't have a karmic relation, so it was his own doing, the Lord spat. You may leave. Take your son's corpse and give him a proper burial, she said, clearly indicating the end of this matter. Yes, your lordship. Lazarus bowed down as he clenched his fist around his hammer. He was clearly not resigned to give up. Go. Yes, he said, collecting the hammer in his storage ring and then collecting the coffin before bowing and leaving the court. In the entire process, he never looked at Rosette or Aerith again. It was as if he was barely controlling himself. Naturally, he had no idea that at a certain moment Victor had marked the hammer with a fate-racking thread. Yes, Victor wanted this hammer really badly. Although he had no idea if he could remove its lock, he had more than one idea on how he could utilize it. The bad thing was that he couldn't just ask for it. It would be very awkward, especially if his request was refused. He would be the first suspect if it were to get stolen later. Lazarus left just like that. Let this be the end of this matter. Atma, make sure not to bully him for the next few days, the Lord sighed, warning her first disciple. I understand, Atma said, chuckling a little. For some reason, Victor felt that this woman was the kind of man must not trifle with. Then all of you can leave, the Lord said. Victor, you stay, she said. Eh? Me? Victor asked, surprised. Yes. Atma frowned, giving Rosette and then Victor a curious look before bowing and leaving. Rosette, Germana, and Lizard's lackeys all bowed down and left right behind her. Be careful, Erde, who knew why the Lord wanted to talk to Victor, whispered in his ear as she walked out. She was the last to leave. Moments later, the court was silent with only the Stormlord and Victor facing each other. The Stormlord sighed and flicked her finger. Biomem. The entire hall grew dim around Victor. Warning. You are being affected by the Truth Arena SSS AOE. 1. You will say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. 2. You will never consider lying an option. 3. You will forget what happened here after you leave. Warning. The activator doesn't have 10 times your authority. Do you want to let the Truth Arena affect you? Yes, no. Shit. Lords were really troublesome. It seemed like he couldn't relax at all. Victor took a moment to think about it. Since this was an AOE thing, he could easily dodge it without being discovered, so he pressed NO as he looked around fanatically. Is Victor White your real name? An ethereal voice asked in the darkness. Kinda. My full name is Victor Von Weiss. I use Victor White for the public. He quickly told the truth. The Lord must already know that. Good. How old are you? Usually 18. Usually. When I get caught with a minor, I report it as 17. The Lord was speechless. This guy was a pervert. How did you fool Lazarus? She decided to get to the main point. The bitch. She must have been still suspecting him. Victor considered playing dumb, but on the other hand, he smirked inwardly. I am not sure. Oh, so you did fool him. Did you act against Lizard in the library? Yes. I secretly used a talisman that my master gave me on Lizard back then. It should have intensified his feelings and caused him to make trouble in the library, but for some reason it only made him have an erection. He must have been a little horny seeing Aerith. It was so sudden that his penis must have gotten broken inside his pants. The Lord who didn't expect that answer, but thinking about it. It made sense. The armor Lizard was wearing was very tough if his little thing were to grow big all of a sudden. Bam! It was a self-inflicted injury. The Lord shook her head to try and erase that disturbing image from her mind. Did you know about the demon in the book? She asked. No. I just knew that the book had some very strong skill hidden in it. Oh. What skill? How did you know that? Not sure what skill. I met a couple of cannibals on the way. When I interrogated them, they told me all about it having something very strong. They were on the way to the capital to get it. Oh, the Lord frowned. Something about 2 cannibals was mentioned in the file that Aerith presented the previous day. This made sense. It must have all been some plot by a demon. Why did you act against Lizard then? She asked. He was looking at my wife in a lascivious way. Victor spat angrily. Only I can do that. Oh, she nodded, typical male reaction. Was the story you told Rosette about how you entered this world the truth? Yes. I only hid a few things, he said as he looked around, making sure no one was listening. Oh. Elaborate. You see, one of my cousins came along and I told everyone that he was just killed, hiding the fact that I was the one who threw him in front of me as I escaped the demons. He died, Victor sighed. Oh, she smirked. Typical young master action. She was not surprised. I don't sense any remorse in you. I never liked that guy. He threatened my big brother's position as the future patriarch. She sighed. This was usual in noble families. What about your master? Did you lie about meeting him? She asked. Yes. My master is interested in men. He took me in because he liked me, he answered absent-mindedly. Although such an excuse was extremely stupid, it was very effective. The Lord froze. She suspected this point when Rosette told her about Victor. How could a mysterious master take in some random guy just like that? Now the question was answered. You're also gay? She asked. I don't discriminate, he stated proudly. She looked at him with disgust. Did your master do anything sexual to you? No. But I know that he is taking his time. Did he tell you that he took you in because he liked you? She interrupted him. No, but I can see it in his eyes. I know that look. He licked his lips. She grimaced in disgust. This guy is a real pervert. It was not an act after all. What did your master tell you about the Storm Lord? She finally decided to stop asking random things. She really worried that the mental damage he was giving her might lead to her early death. It was just that his words had made it clear that he was just a pawn. Not much. He said that she was an old triangle lord. Whatever that meant. He also said that she was on the verge of advancing, but that the fake Sun Lord managed to stop her by using a curse. Does he know the nature of this curse? She asked. He said that the Sun Lord had set up a ritual in the Death Valley where he sacrificed elves while telling them to curse at her as they fell down. The Storm Lord gasped. She always suspected that Zendo was the one behind her curse. You told Aerith that a demon was behind it. My master is not sure. But he suspects as such, especially with the Sun Temple being infested with demons taking top positions. Victor shrugged. Oh, she didn't know that. Did he say why he wants to help me? I meant help the Storm Lord. Yes, he said that he had many reasons. The first was that he didn't want the balance of this world to break, and he also wanted to ask her for 3 favors. Oh. Do you know what those favors are? Yes, he told me to ask the Storm Lord when I meet her to make a deal. I see. So, what are those favors? The first is that the Storm Lord must allow me, Rosette, and all of her group to return safely to our original world, saying that you would no longer need her after you were cured and that their departure had damaged my world significantly. Victor made a totally random reason. Oh. A good point, she nodded. Can your master send you back? She asked. He said he could, and I don't have a reason to doubt him. I bet he plans to sleep with me that very night. He is originally from your world? She interrupted him with disgust. She couldn't wait for this interrogation to end. This guy was creeping her to the extreme. Yeah, he said he was researching something and ended up here. Something? A poisonous guy named Yazel. He wanted me to ask the Storm Lord for all the info the Storm Lord has on him and how did he manage to leave this world. Yazel is alive, she gasped. No idea. Master only said that the guy caused some big incident in my world and ran away. He said he tracked his origins to here. Oh, the Storm Lord was lost in thoughts for a moment there. What is the third thing? He wants to establish a demon-hunting sect and wants the Storm Lord's help doing that. Victor said he needed a base in this world. Doing it incognito would definitely be better, but since that was unrealistic in such a short time, he planned to ask the Lord directly. Oh, she paused. She didn't mind that it would allow her to uncover many of this mysterious master's secrets. Can he really help me? When he said it, he was very sure. Do you still have any of his talismans? Yes, Victor reached for his underwear and took out a tattered talisman. It was one he found in the lowest layer of the Death Gorge. He made sure to use a Sharpie to draw random symbols on it. Wind Miracle Talisman, SSS. Create a wide area tornado. A wind miracle, the Lord gasped. Not sure about that. Yes. He said that it was its name. Victor nodded. I see. She was really tempted to grab this talisman to study it, but remembering where Victor pulled it from, she decided it was not worth it. She would ask for it later as a part of their contract. See what? Victor asked. Nothing. Do you love Aerith? She decided to ask one last thing. How could I not love a horny girl, he said. It is one of my fetishes. Just imagine a 69 with her using that lubricated horn of hers to it. You may leave, she spat as she clenched her heart. The image was too depraved for an old traditional woman like her. Eh? Boom. Moments later, he found himself lying on his back outside the courtroom. What happened? He asked as he looked around as if he was lost. Wasn't I just? Your meeting with her lordship is over, one of the two giantesses guarding the door said. Her lordship will meet you once you get the promised talisman, the second one said. The contract will be ready by then. How did you know about that? He asked as if he totally forgot what happened earlier. We always do. You may leave, the first giantess interrupted. Oh. Victor smirked inwardly. Thankfully this went as planned. The only thing he was going to be worried about was what the Storm Lord's next step would be and how he should prepare. He really didn't want to kill her. What he told her moments earlier was the truth. If she were to die, he was 99% sure this world would be completely lost to the demons. Master. A pretty female assistant ran into her master's living room where he was busy educating another female assistant. What? He asked as he fixed his clothes, gesturing to the kneeling assistant below the desk that she could leave. It is about the gate that opened in Dryma, the first assistant said as her colleague left quickly. The elders had already briefed me about it. Eric spat, although it is near, we can't do a thing about it. The council's men would be swarming it in no time with the news about it being broadcasted live. It is a mess. It is not that, the assistant said as she presented her master with a tablet. The intelligence department just finished analyzing the video and found something. What? Eric asked as he looked at the table where a video that he had seen an hour earlier was playing. Look at the background, the assistant said, pressing a button to the side. Here, he added as the video zoomed to a corner behind the late president who was giving his speech. Some person was chasing another and the guards seemed to have stopped them just before the explosion. Those are, Eric gasped as the video zoomed in. Yulian, he gasped. Yes, and the intelligence department thinks that the veiled person behind him is Lily. Shit. Did any of the elders see this? He asked. As he stood up, the tablet in his hand, he glared at Yulian's scared face. Yes. I couldn't stop them as I got the report at the same time they did, she replied nervously. Shit. Send the assassins, he spat. But what if? As long as they can do it inside the dungeon, it will not be a problem. Just make sure to send another team to kill them after they finish their job, he spat. Yulian and that slut must die. Understood. Akaichi, thanks for the donations. Enjoy. Chapter 467, Bad Cat. How was it? Aerith, who was waiting for Victor in the carriage outside the palace, asked as soon as he sat opposite her. Victor sighed. I don't know. But he hesitated as the carriage began to move. But, I think I might have been, he swallowed. Assaulted, he said. Assaulted? You think? What do you mean? Aerith frowned and asked. It is just that I don't remember what happened after you guys left. It is as if I was roofied, he spoke in a fearful tone. Roofied? Drugged then raped, he yelled nervously. Why else would I have gaps in my memories, he added as he began checking his pants. Aerith glared at him, not sure if he was serious or not. Moments later she sighed and shook her head. Don't worry, her lordship must have interrogated you. The artifact she uses causes people to forget what happened, she clarified. Oh. He frowned. Are you sure? Yeah. But what if? Her lordship would never do that, Aerith spat. Victor looked at her for a second then sighed. I will trust you on that. But if you get any STD in the future, we will both know the source. Boom! Thunder reverberated in the sky then. Boom. A bolt of lightning struck next to the carriage, startling the two horses that pulled it and made them go wide. The coachman was barely able to retake control thanks to his imperial coachman class. What the? Victor asked as he looked around as if he was frightened. You better watch your words. Aerith glared at him angrily as she spat and pointed to the palace. Seriously? Did this guy just speak badly of the Lord outside her palace? Thankfully the Lord didn't intend to kill them and just sent a warning. Ah. Oops. Sorry, Victor quickly nodded as if he understood. In fact, he just made sure that his suspicion was right and the Lord had started keeping track of him. For the next few days, you better act obediently, Aerith sighed. She figured out the same thing. A really good wife. I will, but it would be a little boring. Will you accompany me? He asked as he looked at her like a puppy. No. I am busy, she looked away. Doing what? He frowned. Just busy. Secret stuff. Then when will you be free? I don't know, she didn't dare to look at him. He squinted his eyes. Are you perhaps dodging me? He asked as if he was a little hurt. No, it is just, she hesitated. She was not ready to be held by him yet. Her heart was very conflicted. The way she totally lost herself in his arms that day was still fresh in her mind and she was scared of that feeling. Did your master tell you about my situation? She finally decided to confront her fears. He just said that you were a demonkin, some kind of half-demon. I could easily connect the dots, he sighed. She nodded, looking out of the carriage's window. Did he tell you what comes with being a demonkin? She asked. Victor paused. To tell the truth, he didn't know much about that and his fictional master hadn't told him shit. He just said that half-demons are very strong, yet very dangerous. He didn't clarify though, he quickly made up a reply. Is there something I should know? He asked. Aerith sighed. Demonkin are basically demons that have human bodies. Our souls are very similar to that of a demon who only wants to devour others and grow stronger. That is our true nature that is only thinly covered by human sentiment and it might collapse at any moment, turning the demonkin into a real monster, she said. Oh, you are afraid that you might hurt me? He asked as he looked at her, grasping her delicate hand and forcing her to turn and look him in the eye. Yes, she said. If you were so dangerous, the Lord wouldn't have let you roam around freely, he said. The demonic nature can be sealed. Mine was sealed by my oath to her lordship, but even so, this seal is very weak and connected to my consciousness, she spat. If I were to lose control of my body, I have no idea what I would do, she said. It happened 3 times before, and thankfully I was in battle and it worked in my favor, she added in a low voice. Victor finally got it, smirking a little. I don't think that would be a problem, especially since we have a system of marriage, he said. In fact, he was not afraid since he had a higher-level demonic bloodline and he could easily suppress her, like what happened that day in his room. Perhaps, but I am not going to bet your life on it, she said firmly. Then what are you proposing? He asked, squeezing her hand. What a good girl. Give me some time, she said, biting her lip. My soul is still weak because of the curse. Once I have healed up properly, I am sure we will be able to do it after some preparations. I need to get some clarity potions and such, she said in a very low voice as she blushed, looking down and not daring to look him in the eye. Oh, this girl was very shy despite being horny. Well, he was not in a hurry. The cooked chicken was not going to go anywhere and he needed some private time to finish reading the books and prepare a few things first, just in case. Then I will wait. Thank you, she whispered. When will your master return with that talisman anyway? She asked, changing the subject. Any day now, Victor said. Knowing him, I am sure he is already on his way here, he added. Oh, young master. How was it? Leo asked as Axel, who left the brothel at dusk, sat in the car. Not bad. Did you get yourself a hooker, as I told you to? Axel asked with a smile as he remembered spending last night and this morning with Gloria doing all kinds of depraved things. It was as if one of his dreams was coming true. Yes, but I don't have your energy, young master, Leo replied, not forgetting to add some bootlicking in the process. Hee. That's natural. Axel, whose boot was successfully licked, nodded in approval. He really liked Leo. Where to now? Shall I take you to your mansion? Leo asked. No, take me to my father's mansion. After that I want you to return here to pick up a girl and send her to the White Hotel. A girl? Oh, you mean? Leo gasped. Yes. She was so good that I purchased her contract. She is now mine, Axel smirked. He was really glad. Young master. You are amazing, Leo spoke in admiration as he started the car, not daring to show the envy in his heart. Damn it. Why did his mother have to marry his stupid father? Why wasn't he born a young master? Not wanting to hear Axel brag anymore, he decided to turn on the radio. We climbed the ivory tower. We crossed the crystal sea. Far beyond the black desert. There, the young master will be. Axel, who was hearing it, froze. Although he was not that into music due to him spending his life in that sect, he knew a lot about this one song. Right? It was a big hit in his previous life. And he was sure it was released 10 years later, as he was hired as a bodyguard when they were filming its promotional video. How could he hear it now? Could it be that it was written beforehand? No. The original song's last line was, "There my love will be." Something was definitely wrong here. This song, what's its name? Axel asked nervously. Young Master from the Beyond? Leo asked. It is produced by your company's young master. Ms. Mira, your wife, is one of the singers with this new girls' idol group, he clarified, not sure if Axel was testing him. Oh, what? Axel was shocked as his mind raced. The song's original name was Lover from the Beyond. Do you know who wrote it? He asked. No idea. Idol songs usually get attributed to the band itself to fake them being talented, but usually the lyrics writer and composer are someone else. Leo, who was an insider in the media industry, clarified. You can probably look it up on the company's inner website though, he suggested. Good idea, Axel said as he took out his family-issued smartphone and logged into the company's website using Victor's credentials that Maigret gave him, then quickly searched the song's name on the database. Name, Young Master from the Beyond. Number 7. Album, Love Train. Singer, Mira Elvin, Lara and the Magical Girls. Lyrical, Abe Sanders, Victor White. Composer, Vernica Swat, Abe Sanders. Holy shit, he quickly began flipping through the other songs in the album. Love Train, Pussycat, Play the Flute, Rainbow Crossers. He remembered hearing most of them from the past. Just like that Love Train song he heard in the company that day when that bastard attacked him. He just totally forgot to ask about them due to the situation. At first, he really presumed that the song was written by Horizon Media, as although he did hear it in his past life, he didn't know who sang it. But now looking at all those songs, he could clearly tell that something was very wrong, as he was sure they were sung by different people in his past life. Most of them were really popular. The only explanation? A time traveler. He quickly found out that the only connection between the songs, other than the singers, was a single name. Abe Sanders? Could he really be a time traveler? Wait. Where did he hear that name before? Right? Wasn't Abe the piece of shit who killed himself in front of him? Was he also a time traveler? What was the meaning of this? No, wait. Axel paused as he looked at his phone and did a quick search, this time for novels written by Crimson Pearl, Abe's pen name. His eyes contracted as he read their titles. Some of them were novels he read in his past life and loved. Although he didn't remember the authors' names since he read from a pirate website, he was sure they were also by different people. So it was true. Abe was definitely a time traveler. HSSSSSSSSSSSSS, he gasped. Young master, are you okay? Leo asked, noticing how pale Axel's face became. I am fine. Just drive. Axel dismissed him as his shiver ran through his back. Abe's demise was clearly some kind of plot, but it might not be some kind of another family's influence as his father predicted. Maybe it had something to do with him being a time traveler. He needed to not only investigate this further, as it might lead him to some clue about his situation, but also be extra careful from now on, lest he end up dead as well. Thankfully, he didn't reveal any future info yet and his to anyone, but he paused as he remembered something and a crazy thought passed through his mind. Young master. You are here at last. George, who seemed to be waiting at the mansion's door, welcomed Axel as soon as he entered. Sorry to keep you waiting, I got a little delayed, Axel said. He was asked to come here a little early to prepare for the coming ritual. It is okay, we still have ample time to brief you about the plan. What's wrong with you? You look pale, he asked, noticing Axel's complexion. I am fine. Just a little tired, Axel replied, waving his hand. Young master, spending too much time at a brothel is not good for your health, George said as he guided him through a long decorated corridor. I know, Axel sighed. I want to ask you something. Will Margaret be here today? He asked as they walked into a nearby empty study. A safe room? No. Since she is pregnant, Master feared that something wrong might happen, so he forbade her from attending, George said as he locked the door and then walked toward the desk. You don't need to be that wary of her, she no longer considers you an enemy, he whispered, completely misunderstanding. No, I just needed her for something. I will go see her at the mansion later, Axel quickly said. Young master, you better not. George, who was about to pull something from the desk, paused. It is not advisable to try and seduce your brother's wife, he whispered. That's not it, damn it. It is something related to that guy Abe. I just want to confirm a few things, Axel clarified. Did George really see him as some kind of depraved bastard? I see, George sighed. Sorry for the misunderstanding. But since I don't know you well, I felt the need to give such crass advice, he added as he bowed slightly. Their family was full of perverts, so one would never know. It's okay. Now what should I do? Axel said, getting to business. A few things. First of all, please take a look at this file and memorize the people in it, he said, taking a thin folder and giving it to Axel. Axel, who took a seat on the couch to the side, quickly flipped it open. Inside it, there was a stack of papers with names and photos. Those are, he asked. They were the people who would be attending the ritual tonight, and you are expected to know their names. You just have to act a little stiff. So, who's the one I need to fool? Axel asked. Page 5, George replied. Axel quickly flipped to that page. Max? Isn't he my brother? Yes. He is a spy? Axel asked in shock. How corrupt was this fucking family of his? We are not sure yet, but he is a little fishy. That's why we want you to reveal that you are not the real victor and observe his reaction. You will also have to report him to Olaf along with what will happen in the ritual, George replied. I understand. Axel paused for a moment as he read Max's class. Shadow Whisperer. A class that gave someone the skills to subtly influence others' thoughts. Really suitable for a traitor. How shall I do it exactly? It is all on page 40. Make sure to review everything before it is time to move. Oh. Okay, Axel nodded as he flipped to the page and began reading. George waited patiently. Wait. Wouldn't he be a little skeptical if we did it like that? Axel asked after reading the summary. Of course he would, but he is not the only one we are fooling, George said. Remember, you are not a player here, you are but a bait. Oh. Axel finally got it. His father was really evil. Let's hope this works, he sighed. That pussy cat. Spank the pussy cat. Dead pussy cat. Cat. Filthy pussy cat. Traitor pussy cat. Evil pussy cat. Cat, cat, cat. Damn it, Linda screamed angrily as she threw her phone at the thin 83 OLED TV screen, shattering them both into pieces. What's wrong? Bill, who entered the hotel room right at that moment, asked in a worried tone. Hubby. They are bullying me, she cried as she threw herself at his chest. Who dares? He asked in shock. Them. That bitch sister of mine and her pervert husband, Linda said in a sad tone, hiding her anger. They clearly made the song to mock me. What? How? He asked. Wasn't the song about some kind of SM play? Ah. My nickname as a child was Pussy, she said in a low voice. Bill exclaimed. You mean? Yes. She cried. Hubby, please seek justice for me, she cried. Do you want me to give birth to our child while sad? She asked, softly holding her belly. Linda. Look. I can't touch Victor at the moment, he sighed. Not before the tournament anyway. Then can you at least punish that slut Lynn for me? Linda asked as she clenched her teeth. Now with the Von Rosen family in a mess, the stupid bitch is no longer important to your family, she said. I am sure no one would shed a tear if she were to suddenly have an accident. Oh. You mean, that bitch used to bully me a lot as a kid, it is about time she paid for that. Didn't you curse them or something? Ah. I don't know how they fixed it. I should have gone harder, it is my fault for being merciful, she spat. She really had no idea how Lynn managed to survive that curse. She used one of the artifacts she stole from her mother's vault to cast it, and it should have been pretty strong. But this didn't matter anymore. Can't you seek justice for me? Of course I can, he sighed, weighing his options. It is true that Lynn girl was no longer important to the family, and as long as he did it carefully, he could secretly get rid of her. What would I get in return? Linda blushed as she bit her lip. Whatever you want, she said as she looked down like an innocent girl. Really? Can I get a down payment? He asked as he planned to send an assassin to get rid of that chick. Ah. Okay, but mind the baby, okay? She said, holding her pregnant bully. Last time you were very rough, she said in a seductive voice as she wiggled her butt. Don't worry, my son is a tough little guy, he smirked. Akaichi. Sorry for the delay, next chapter as soon as I finish editing it. Chapter 468, The Old Master. What do you mean we can't go back yet? You promised, one rude girl snapped at the blonde, handsome young self-proclaimed emperor who stood in front of her in his silky regal robes. Listen here, little Mavis, first of all, please use the proper pronoun, and secondly, this seats team did the math, Vic said, nodding to one of the two girls in the elven secretary cosplay costume behind him. The chance of you surviving after returning is practically zero. You will be captured almost immediately and will also risk exposing this emperor's own operation ahead of time, he explained. No. You can't do that, she spat. Mavis, calm down, one other girl who felt that what Vic said was reasonable, said. I have things to do. It is my life, my decision. I am a free woman. No, you are not, someone suddenly said in a harsh voice as out of thin air a hooded figure appeared. He was an old man, but his face was barely visible under his black cloak. The girls stepped back worriedly. They have been through a lot of shit and have already realized that many unnatural things exist in this world. And every cell in their body was screaming to them that this hooded figure was dangerous. Let this emperor introduce you. This is the old master. You can call him master for short, Vic said. From now on, you are under his care, he added as he put his hands on his waist and nodded to the old master. What? The girls frowned. What do you, your highness, mean? One of them asked, remembering to use the right pronoun. Simple, in order to keep this seat's promise and make sure that you survive at the same time, we have decided to make you stronger, Vic explained generously. For the next few months, you will be under the care of the old master here, who will teach you how to hunt and kill demons. What? The girls gasped. Stop screaming. You are hurting this old man's delicate ears, the old master scolded. As His Highness Vic said, you will be under my care, and you will do as I tell you to. No. I refuse, Mavis screamed. She had enough. Bam. The old master, who was 10 feet away from Mavis, appeared in front of her in the blink of an eye and then slapped her face, making her fly and hit a nearby hut. Bitch. If I were not your real biological father, I would have killed you for saying that. He spat. Now stop bitching around. What? The girls froze. Old master. That's going too far. You promised not to hurt them, Vic quickly said as he ran to check on Mavis, promptly giving her a healing pill as he glared at the old master. And please stop proclaiming that you are people's real father. It is very offensive and not funny at all, he clarified, making the girls quickly figure out that this was the old master's way of cursing. Really toxic. I say what I want to say, and you were the one who gave the girls to me to train, and it is my job how to do it. The old master spat. Old master, please use the right pronoun. Fuck you and fuck your right pronoun. My fucking C must have been crooked when I fed your mother to make her conceive you. Don't you dare speak about this emperor's imperial mother, Vic screamed angrily. For some reason, the girls no longer found his stupid way of talking strange. Shut up, the old man suddenly yelled as he appeared next to Vic, and like what happened with Mavis, slapped him so hard that he flew a dozen feet away before landing and making the elven secretaries run to his side to check on him. He will be fine. I will never kill my sons. Just take him away and let him rest a bit. The elven secretaries nodded and dragged Vic into one of the huts. The old master shot them a fleeting glare, then shook his head and looked at the girls. Vic told me that you have been practicing martial arts for the last few weeks, right? He asked, ignoring Mavis, who crawled out of the debris of the damaged hut while glaring at him. Yes, one of them said. Let's say how far you have progressed then, he said, flicking his finger, and out of thin air a wolf appeared. It was not a normal wolf but a huge one that had 2 horns, bright red eyes from its mouth, and a green acidic drool oozed out. H. The girls quickly screamed as they stepped away. Those are your prey. Demonic wolves, frank demonic monsters, the old master explained. Kill it or die trying, the old master said coldly. The girls just froze as they eyed the wolf, calming down a bit as they saw that it was tied to a pole on the ground. What are you waiting for? The old master asked. If it is not dead by the end of the hour, I will slap each one of you twice. He spat as he slashed with his hand, cutting the wolf's rope. The next moment it attacked the weakest girl she could find, Mavis, who could barely stand up. Kya. The girls screamed as they saw the wolf jump Mavis and push her down with its large paws and sharp claws. No. Mavis, one girl screamed, but no one dared to approach. How dare you? She asked the old master as she turned to face him. Dare what? Do you think if you were to be released from here the danger would be any lesser? He asked with sarcasm in his voice. The girls frowned. But, don't worry. She is not dead. My daughter really got my genes. She is a tough girl. He smirked, turning to face the wolf. How long do you plan to play dead for? He asked. I am not playing dead. And I am not your fucking daughter, someone said. It was the bloodied Mavis who pushed the wolf and crawled from under it to reveal that it was already dead with a dagger stuck in its forehead. The dagger she prepared to use to stab Vic in case he dared to do anything to her. How long do I need to be trained to be strong enough to beat those bastards who kidnapped me? She asked, seemingly convinced. The Von Zwei family are beyond anything you can imagine, the old master said. But, if you follow my command, you will be able to do it, he said as he threw her a healing pill. That demon wolf, although already beaten up beforehand to weaken it, still managed to slash her arm and it looked nasty. Mavis caught it in midair and ate it immediately. Then I will be under your care, master, she said with determination in her eyes. It is just, can I ask you for a favor? She asked after a brief hesitation. Sure. You are my daughter after all. I am not. And stop spouting nonsense, she spat. I have this little brother. I wonder if there is a way to send him some money with a message to reassure him of my situation, she said directly, biting her lip. The old master raised one eyebrow. It was as if he got interested. I will arrange it, but you will have to work for the money I pay in your stead. Sure, she nodded, as if finally a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Earlier, all she was thinking was going back to check on him, but now with a real path to grow stronger, maybe she could seek revenge for their parents before she could return home. Good. Now each of you, take your weapon and be ready. You will have to kill 3 demons each before midnight, he told the girls with a smirk, flicking his finger to make 3 other wolves appear from his private collection. It was going to be a long day. The night was moonless, and the city sky was pitch black. This way, young masters, the maid, Adele, told Max and Rex as she slowly guided them to a deserted path behind the manor, guided only by a lantern. We are almost there. Yeah, Max replied briefly as he looked around. He really wanted to know what kind of awakening ritual his father prepared. He had a tone of questions, but in order not to be suspected of being an agent, he kept them to himself. What do you think father wants from us? Rex, who had no idea about the ritual, asked. You will see, Max replied confidently as they finally stepped into a clearing in the forest and stood still watching the strange scene in front of them. There in front of them, there was a huge structure that was covered with all kinds of mirrors and lenses. It seemed to be some kind of modern art piece, but Max could tell that it wasn't, especially after noticing that in its middle there was an object covered with a black steel domed vault. It had 4 high-ranking family guards in black armor standing guard around it. Surrounding the structure, many people were gathering and curiously inspecting it. Some were players from the family, and others were his illegitimate half-siblings. Young master, feel free to roam around. The master will inform you about everything once everything is ready, Adele said seriously, before retreating to one of the military tents that were erected around the clearing. Oh, Max nodded. What do you? Rex began to inquire again, but paused as they sensed someone approaching them. Esteemed brothers, I am so glad to see you once again, someone shouted, making them turn to face the newcomer. It was none other than their little brother, Luke, who greeted them politely. Luke, why are you here? Rex asked in surprise, noticing how thin and pale his brother had become. Staying in the mines must have been hard on him. Did your punishment end? I don't know. I was busy, working out when the family guards came and dragged me out, He said it with annoyance as if he really didn't want to leave the mines. Drag you out? Rex frowned. Why would someone need to be dragged out of that shitty place? Yeah, those bastards didn't even give me time to finish my workout, Luke clarified. I just got here an hour ago, and they are saying that they will let me attempt the family ceremony ahead of time with the others. What? Rex exclaimed. Could it be? He turned to look at Max. Is this for real? He was not that stupid and could easily connect the dots. He could finally get why his father gathered all of his offspring. Yes, Max nodded. Father is planning to do a special ceremony. Max, who got a tip from George before, replied. Is John here? He asked about their youngest legitimate brother. Yes, he was dragged by that stupid lass Lara earlier. She wanted to show him the mansion, Luke replied with annoyance. He didn't like Lara. Oh, Rex swallowed. The mere mention of that girl's name made him shiver. The feeling of getting punished by her was still fresh in his mind. Esteemed brothers, I wanted to ask, will there be some kind of a test? Luke, who didn't know the reason for Rex's expression, asked nervously. No, it is just… Max paused as he saw Mike and Victor walking toward him. Mike, he greeted with annoyance. It has been 3 years since the last time they met. Victor, congrats on your weddings. Sorry, I couldn't make it, he told Victor. Both of them knew why Max didn't come. It was because he was not invited in the first place. It's okay, Victor said awkwardly. He seemed a little nervous, but Max didn't find that strange. The Victor he knew was that kind of weakling who could only be pushed around by others. I heard you survived a big incident in the mines? Max pressed, making Luke look at Victor. There was something big that day and they said it was an explosion of some kind, but he didn't know Victor was involved. Yeah, I can't talk about it, Victor replied. I lost my memories about what happened there. So I heard. Max nodded. Max, I wanted to see you yesterday. Where were you? Mike, who felt the awkward situation, intervened. Just doing some side business around town. I had no idea you planned this ceremony. No one informed me, he stated his point. It is a top-secret operation, Mike replied. After the orb got busted, we had to keep the fact that we found a new artifact a secret. In fact, I only knew about this a few weeks ago when my wives participated in the first test, he replied. You remember Honey and Bunny, right? Mike asked with a smug look. Wives? Those two? You married them? Max frowned as he remembered the two girls he had a fight with Mike over. It was then that their relationship became sour. Over a couple of whores whom he wanted to gift to some old man. Yes, father approved last week. They are special after all, Mike winked. Oh, did they really become… Oops. Be careful there, Mike interrupted him, stopping him from saying the word players. You don't want to spoil father's favorite hobby. Ah, noted. Max nodded, remembering that Luke was beside him. His father's favorite hobby was telling others about the existence of players and watching the shocked expressions on their faces. Did they succeed? He asked. In the family, the way to take a wife was to make sure she gave birth to a pureblood child. The other way was if they were players themselves. Only a few knew about this exception, but it was the loophole that allowed the family to engage Linda to Victor in the first place. Yes, it is pretty much a 100% guarantee, Mike replied. Really? Without a bloodline? He asked, making Luke look at him with a frown as he tried to figure out what he meant. Yup. What about hidden dangers? Max asked. Artifacts without hidden dangers were very rare and very special. There are some limitations, but with ample preparation, it should be fine, Mike replied. You can see for yourself later. Look, father is already on the stage. Let's go, he said, pointing to Theodore, who was heading to a stage to the side of the clearing, accompanied by George, who was carrying a large arms chair for him. Kaichi. Next chapter, as soon as edited, maybe tomorrow. Chapter 469. Don't harm me. I am going to tell you a secret, guys. You better listen carefully. Theodore, who sat on the armchair, holding his pipe, surrounded by his offspring, began to speak. This world is not what you see. In fact, it has a system like that of video games. Max, who stood in the back and watched his stupid father speak, got bored almost immediately, so he could only look around and inspect his siblings who were listening with interest. The young master needed him to make a full report after all. The first who caught his eyes were Lara, who was gaping in shock at her father's proclamations. This little bitch. Until now, he had no idea how she got this strong. Damn it, she was supposed to grow weak after he made Rex tamper with the family art she was practicing. Still, to this moment, he had no idea how his stupid father figured it all out and even found a way to cure her. Maybe some old expert was helping him. This was the only explanation. If not for the young master's timely help, Rex would have been in some very deep shit. As he thought about it, his eyes naturally drifted to the little maid beside Lara. She was glaring at someone hateful. He turned to follow her gaze. Ah, she was shooting death glares at Victor, who was standing beside the stage. listening to his father with interest. Strange. Was there some kind of dispute between them? Deciding to inquire about this later, he turned to inspect others. He needed to write a report about what happened today later, so he needed to collect info. The first who caught his attention was naturally the one he feared most, Alice. She was standing with Mike's two whore wives discussing something. The young master had told him to be careful around her as she might discover his plots, so he usually tried to not interact with her at all. He never liked her anyway with her bossy personality. Giving her a dismissive look, he turned to Iris, the bitch legitimate sister he didn't know existed. This one really came out of nowhere and ruined the plans that the young master helped him formulate. In the past, he was the second in line to inherit his father's position in the lower elders' council if Mike were to have an accident, as Alice was not eligible due to her belonging to the heavenly sect. But now he had two extra rivals. The first was Iris, and the second was Victor, who was supposed to fail his ritual. And with the current ceremony, John and Luke might also enter the fight. Damn it, his master's plan for him to rise up was in shambles. The last time they met the young master, he was even told that the situation had changed and it was no longer needed for him to inherit his father and that they would secure a good position for him later. Why? It was not his fault. Damn it. He squeezed his fist as he remembered the young master's latest command from yesterday, telling him to try and secure the most talented individuals from between his half-siblings. The problem was that this command came a little too late after he antagonized most of them earlier. It was not his fault for not realizing that his father was doing an awakening ceremony until it was too late. At first, he really thought his father was going to try to rehabilitate those losers and he had no interest at all but to keep them in their place. Damn it. His eyes slowly drifted toward the crowd of young men who couldn't believe their ears hearing their father explain as he smoked his pipe. He could already see that the most promising ones had already been bought up by Iris. Shit. He was extra angry. When the hell did everything start to go wrong? Right, it was when he gave Luke that rune stone that the young master gave him and told him to ruin Victor's ceremony. He slowly turned toward Luke. The young man was not paying attention to his father at all. His eyes were glued to Mike's twin wives who were standing with their perky butts aimed toward him. When the fuck did his little brother become a pervert loser? He quickly shook his head. Time in captivity might really change a person. He needed to find some time and talk to him a bit after this. Suddenly his eyes caught another familiar face. His cousin Morris, that pervert repissed. Why was this guy here too? He could easily figure out that this must be a move by and to show her power to the poor guy's grandfather. What he really wanted to know was why was he also shooting Victor glares full of malice. He remembered hearing about it. It was about that filthy girl Arya. He could only sigh again. Stupid perverts. All they knew was fighting about women. That's it. Are there any further questions? Theodore finally finished his speech and asked, switching Max's attention. Will it be dangerous? One guy asked. Max remembered his name was Roy and for some strange reason, he gave some special air that reminded him of the young master. No. Impossible. How could this illegitimate pauper compare to young Master Sixth? There is always a certain danger, but as long as you don't move around or try anything stupid it will be fine. Just remember that if you are presented with a choice, choose carefully and keep your authority as high as possible, Theodore explained. Anyone else? Will we be as strong as Lara? A slutty girl asked. Depends on your class. Theodore replied with uncertainty. Now, I want every single one of you to look at the plate you were given earlier and locate the spot on the ground that had the same number and then sit on it comfortably. Once I give the signal, you must never move. Everyone looked at each other, then began walking toward the large mirror installment, quickly finding their designated spots. Everyone else, please gather here, Theodore said, making Max notice that there were about 60 people left standing around the stage in addition to his siblings. They were all players and semi-players, and all of them were part of his father's most trusted circle. He slowly approached the stage. Listen up, Theodore, who stepped down, said with a low voice. As many of you have figured out by now, we have a new awakening artifact, Theodore explained. And I have been authorized by the family to run this comprehensive test. He explained as he gave everyone a quick look. Now, this artifact will require some energy to function. So we have set up an energy gathering array around the clearing. We will require each of you to cooperate, he said. Everyone nodded. The old artifact required something similar. How does it work, exactly? Rex asked after Max pinched him. He didn't want to ask that question himself. It uses the light of the stars by reflecting it into the head of the participants, Theodore replied. Usually we can only do one by one before having to wait for a while, but using the mirror's installation you see here, we will be able to do it for multiple people at once, he explained. Oh, Max frowned. Now, let me warn you, although I sounded confident earlier, we are still not sure whether anything wrong will happen as some anomalies might appear. He hesitated. Anomalies? Alice asked with a frown. From her question, Max could presume that, unlike Mike, she had no idea about this artifact. so its source must have been someone else. Yes, some people, about 10%, will experience some delusions representing your greatest fears, he said. Especially those with weak self-discipline. What? Don't worry, it is nothing harmful. We already made it so each two of you would stand in the same spot to restrain each other if something wrong were to happen. Just make sure to keep mindful of your neighbors at all times. If you spot anything strange, restrain them immediately. We can't afford to stop the ceremony at any cost or we will have to wait for another month, Theodore said seriously. Making Max take note of his words. Now go on. Fill the spots marked with blue around a perimeter, semi-players to the far side, and players toward the artifact. There are shackles on the ground. Make sure to tie them to your ankles to stop you from running and ruining everything, he said. We will start shortly. As soon as the men realigned the mirrors and did a test run. Max, who got the premise of it, frowned a little. He didn't like this and it felt weird. But again, wasn't everything about those awakening artifacts the same? But after looking around for a moment and seeing that Mike and Alice found their own spots and tied themselves together, he found a random one to stand in before tying the steel shackle on the ground to his ankle. It didn't have a lock, but removing it later would take some time. Finishing with that. Looking to his right, he quickly recognized his partner. Victor. Young master, aren't you being too rough on them? Yos, one of the elven girls, asked Victor, who lay on her lap as he watched the girls in the field fight 5 demonic wolves that, although were tied up, were very dangerous. Don't worry. They will be fine, Victor said as he set the book he had been reading down. It was as if he was in deep thought. How do people get their class in this world? He asked. They just do. Sini, the other elf who was feeding him grapes earlier, said. The awakening usually happens on adulthood, but some before. Do you know why certain people get certain classes? He asked. The Lord's will, Sini asked. No, it is mostly a matter of probability and concept concentration, Victor explained, mostly to himself as he comprehended many things. The more someone does something, the more likely he will get a class related to it. Babies don't get classes because they don't have enough concepts, he hypothesized. What does this have to do with the training? Yos asked as if she understood something. Those girls have no class as they are not from this world. I am presuming that once I let them leave this cauldron, they will immediately get a class, he said, looking at Mavis. He was very curious about what would become of her dark scion fate. And you want them to be demon slayers? Sini asked. Yup, he said as he slapped her butt. That's why I am making them go through all this, he confirmed her guess. Sorry for doubting you, young master, both of the elf girls said, bowing down in their new skimpy secretary uniforms. It is okay. I will punish you later, he chuckled as they blushed. Now, I will close my eyes and take a little nap. Make sure not to disturb me, and if the girls need anything, tell them the master went out to make more children, he said as he got ready to watch his family's awakening ceremony through Mike's eyes. Max, who stood in his spot beside Victor, watched as everyone got ready and many servants began to operate the mirrors. Using a lantern as a light source, they set them up to reflect a point of light into each participant's forehead. Status. Alpha. Set. Bravo set. Charlie set. All set. Ready to go. Go. Theodore, who stood in his spot, gave the command, making one of the servants click a switch that forced the dome cover in the center of the structure to collapse and reveal a simple small mirror. Max didn't get to inspect it as in the same instant, he felt as if all of his energy began to be sucked up by the array that began to shine with pale blue light under his feet. Someone began to scream. Max began to look around and quickly found the source. It was a female guard who was like him, a part of the array. She was on the ground, kneeling and screaming some incomprehensible words as the other guard who was beside her was grappling her. Soon more and more people began to do the same. Some were speaking to themselves, others were just shouting like that Mori who took off his pants and began to pee at the young guard who stood beside him. Max frowned. Then he heard it. Someone was whispering by his side. Turning, he saw Victor standing there and talking to someone imaginary. Please don't harm me. I am not the old Victor who was lost in the mines, he whispered in a barely audible voice. I am the real Victor von Weiss, the one who was switched at birth. I was raised in the inverted flower sect, and a month ago the truth about my identity was revealed by Olaf, who took me in, changed my looks to appear like Victor and fool everyone. Please stop. Stop. He began to scream again. What? Before Max could fully comprehend what he heard, a bright light flashed and Victor, who was scratching around, stood still and began to look around with a lost look. What just happened? He asked. Max didn't respond. He just turned to look at the others who also suffered from the delusion effect. They were the same, looking around as if they had just woken up from some dream that they couldn't remember. Congratulations. The ceremony is over, Theodore suddenly declared, making Max remember the artifact and look back toward it. But it was already covered up by that dome. Everyone, feel free to inspect your status. But make sure not to reveal anything or use any skills until you are allowed to, someone declared again. It was George this time. Please wait for a moment as the appraisal ceremony will start shortly, he declared. Kaichi. Next chapter is not ready yet. Too much classes to think of. Enjoy. Chapter 470. Sage. After arranging for his siblings to wait for their turn, Mike slowly entered the tent, which had a huge slate in its center. For every member of the family who had gone through the awakening, it was a very familiar slate. It was the one they used to appraise their class after the ceremony. It had been transported here in total secrecy. Is everything ready outside? Theodore, who sat alone beside the slate, asked. Usually, 2 other elders should be present, but due to the secrecy of the ritual and the fact that all of the participants were his offspring, and made the decision to allow him to be alone here with Mike, who was her current candidate to be the next patriarch. Yes, Mike nodded. George will let them in one by one, he added as he felt a little sad. If Victor was not missing, he would have also been able to attend, as he was determined to be trustworthy after donating the artifact to the family. Then sit down and let's start, Theodore said. George, send them in. He yelled to his butler, who was waiting outside. Excuse me. The first to come in was none other than Lara. No one dared to go in before her. This included Luke, who for some reason wanted to escape and drill into some hole but was caught by George. Following Lara was Elle, who was in her casual maid dress. She was Lara's servant, so it was okay for both of them to go together. The moment she stepped in, she began to look curiously around the tent, her eyes naturally drawn to the slate. George explained to you what to do, right? Theodore asked with a gentle smile. Yes, esteemed father, she nodded affirmatively. Then step up and place your hand on the slate. The slate shone with a pale light, and then on its surface, a few words appeared. Level 0, Dragon Princess SSS, Demon Princess SSS, Authority 9, Strength 145, Intelligence 124, Agility 210, Luck 12, Charm 75, Bloodline SSS rank /100%/awakened /no record. Holy shit! Theodore cursed in a low voice. 2 classes at the same time? Both SSS rank? He couldn't help but pinch himself. That hurt. Mike also was in shock. WTF? He wanted to shout out that loudly, but didn't dare to. He was just in shock while wondering what those classes did. He naturally looked toward his father. He looked at him. Both of them had no idea. Ah, is it wrong? Lara asked as she clutched the sides of her simple white dress and bit her lip nervously. No, it is great, Theodore quickly replied. As expected of my daughter, he said. For some reason, he was a little afraid of her. Yes, you are great, Lara, Mike nodded. It is just that your class is too strong, and this will definitely attract problems, he said. Problems? She frowned. Strong people might want to come and challenge you all the time, while others will envy you and try to harm you, Mike explained. Lara nodded. It was just like in anime. Stupid people would always come and challenge the hero. So, make sure not to tell anyone about this, and practice your skills only in a secure place and in secret, Mike added. His little sister might not have realized it, but she was really too overpowered. Yes. Don't show them to anyone without my explicit permission, Theodore quickly said, as Mike reminded him of the crystal matter. This girl had become a real trump card. Lara nodded nervously. By the way, what kind of skills did you get? Theodore asked. It was a little rude, but the girl was his fucking daughter, and like Mike, he was dying of curiosity. I have a lot, Lara said. Dragon Roar, Dragon Strike, Dragon Tame, Demonic Curse, Subjugate, Disguise, Disappearing, Mana Heart, Magic Resonance, Dragonic Eyes, Dragnify, Demonify, Flight. Lara paused. I can fly? She looked at her father and asked as if she realized something. Theodore was speechless. After all those scary name skills, was flight really that important? Yes, you should be able to, but you can only try it in private for now and ask Alice about it. She can fly too. Just remember to not show or discuss your skills before we make sure how they can be used safely, he warned. As for your family ranking, I am not in a place to give you that. It would be issued in a couple of days, he said. Lara was a perfect candidate to be an elite heir, but this needed Anne's approval. She quickly nodded again. Yet this time, she couldn't hide her smile. Now you, Eleanor, Theodore commanded Elle, who was looking at Lara with some envy in her eyes. Yes, she said, shaking her little head before she quickly stepped up and touched the slate. It quickly shone with a bright light, then a few words appeared. Level 0, Class, Sage, X, Authority, 99, Strength, 15, Intelligence, 250, Agility, 16, Luck, 15, Charm, 35. Bloodline, none. Eh? Theodore paused and squinted his eyes to look at the slate, and so did Mike. 99 points authority? An X-class? Did such a thing exist? Victor, who was watching through his eyes, had the same thoughts. Lara's results were overpowered but were expected. L's were something he didn't see coming. Is X a bad thing? L frowned. What did a sage mean anyway? She knew of a sage herb that was used to heal erectile dysfunction by the local herbalist in her village. Could that be her power? No. Theodore cleared his throat. He didn't want to appear ignorant. It is a very rare and powerful class. Sadly, like Lara's class, we don't have info about it in the family archive, so you should test it on your own privately, he said. Yes. And make sure not to mention it to anyone or mention anything about an X rank or anything. This would invite too much trouble, Mike added. I understand. Elle, who was smarter than Lara, quickly realized that Theodore had no fucking idea what her class meant. So she could only nod as she decided to ask Victor, the real one, when he came back. Now, can you tell me what kind of skills you have? Theodore asked. Do I have to? Elle asked. No, Theodore replied. Elle was his daughter's servant. He had no power to ask such a question. But it might give us a hint about what kind of training we should provide for you, he quickly added. Elle paused. I can tell you a few, she said after considering a few things. Aha! Eidetic memory, quick thinking, and contract, she replied after some thinking, clearly deciding to keep some hidden. Scholarly skills. Theodore nodded. Don't you have any combat skills? Like some kind of an attack or flight at the very least. I can't fly, Elle replied, pouting a bit. And I don't have any combat skills. Not direct combat anyway. Theodore raised one eyebrow. The girl was definitely not going to tell him everything. How many skills do you have exactly? He asked. Usually, people get 5 to 6 max on awakening, but there are always special cases like Lara. 20 or so, Elle said dismissively. Or so. Theodore paused in disbelief. It meant there might be more. And you are only going to tell us about 3 of them? Theodore asked. This lowly was not getting intimidated by his glares at all. She nodded. Fine, Theodore sighed. He would naturally figure out what the girl would do when they went into combat training. And she was definitely going to tell Lara. He had just had to tell Adele to overhear it. Do what you want. You may leave, he said. Elle nodded and bowed down, politely following Lara before they both stepped out. Skipping. I am growing old, Theodore sighed. You are not the only one, Mike nodded. Next, Theodore declared. Excuse me, Luke, who was looking around nervously, walked in. For some reason, it was as if he didn't want to be there. Luke, Theodore smiled. Hopefully, like Lara, he would also bring a pleasant surprise. Put your hand on the slate. Luke hesitated. Yes, father, he finally said as he stepped forward and put his hand on the slate. It shone a little, then quickly a few words appeared. Level 0. Class. Motherfucker. F. Authority 2. Strength. 15. Intelligence. 15. Agility. 19. Luck. 10. Charm. 15. Bloodline. AAA rank /100% not awakened /Von Weiss. Eh? Theodore gasped as he saw all of his expectations break in front of his eyes. Hey! Mike also gasped. Luke quickly stepped down, blushing a bit out of shame as he clenched his fists. Why? He had no idea. Victor, who was watching from the other world, knew though. It was a kind of a bug in the system. One could argue that it was a feature too. The main idea was that if someone were to spend most of his time doing something before the ceremony, the class he would get would have a very high percentage related to it. Especially if the player was somehow consumed by that activity. Now that he had read the books from the hidden library, he could easily tell that it was related to the thing called concept. This hidden feature was the same one used by Julian's uncle to utterly destroy him before, as he made him visit all kinds of brothels right before his ceremony. This led to the poor guy getting an escort class and getting demoted by his family. Well, at least that gave him the free time he needed to go search for Lily's trace. Victor was planning for Luke to get the same. That day in the mines, he told the manager there to arrange different women for Luke every night, and to make sure they have ample tits to make his poor brother lose all sanity. This was the first step of his revenge. He planned to make Luke experience the same thing he forced him to endure in his past life. And it really worked. Looking at the class he got, the guy must have developed something for MILFs. After 10 minutes of awkwardness, Theodore, who kept glaring at Luke, finally asked in a cold voice, "What kind of skills do you have? How the hell did his son get this class? Could it be something in his bloodline?" Luke hesitated. "Speak," Theodore spat. Mike to the side kept a straight face, but he was struggling to stomp himself from laughing. He never liked this brat half-brother of his. He was also wondering what Max would think if he were to learn about his brother's class. Seduce, infuriate, push down, threaten and impregnate. Luke replied in a faint voice. Only those. Ah, I also have hardness extreme. I see. At this point, even the angry Theodore was having a hard time keeping his act up. You should focus on a tanking build. His son was only good for angering people and collecting aggro. Yes, Father, Luke replied as he looked at his feet in shame. According to the family rules, I will grant you an inner heir status. Find 2 of your stepbrothers who haven't chosen an allegiance yet to be your followers, and you will attend their appraisal with them, Theodore said after some thinking. Although his class was disgusting and useless, Luke was still a direct heir and he had the right to create his own team. You may leave. Yes, Father. They can only be males, Theodore wanted him as he walked out. He was not going to allow incest in his family. Ah, yes. Luke walked out. Ha 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 ha. Mike began laughing like crazy almost immediately. So he is a real motherf. Shut up, Theodore scolded. He is your brother. Yeah, that's the point. Father, you should never let him back to the island. You don't want him to. Smack. Shut up. It is rude, Theodore scolded again. Your suggestion will be considered though, he added in a low voice. Mike was right. He should send Luke somewhere far away just in case. Next, he called out, making John slowly walk in. He seemed a little disoriented. Luke had shoved him aside as he walked away. John, come here and touch the slate, Theodore sighed. John was 1 year younger than Luke, so he didn't want to be hard on him. Yes, esteemed father, John said, stepping forward and putting his hand on the slate. Level 0. Class, Gunslinger, C. Authority, 5. Strength, 17. Intelligence, 15. Agility, 22. Luck, 10. Charm, 16. Bloodline, AAA rank /100% /not awakened /Von Weiss. Theodore sighed in relief. Although it was not great, it was not bad either. He could tell now that Laris' result might have been because of her awakened bloodline. He really wanted to give those pills Victor made to both John and Luke, but refused, especially after the multiple tries to reproduce them failed. It was determined that the ancestor's bloodline was a vital ingredient, and until another good source for bloodline was discovered, the pills should be saved for the real prospective heirs in the future or should be exchanged for great merit. Both Luke and John were barely passable according to the family standards, and Theodore, who had enough merits to exchange one pill, had already done so and used it on his newly born youngest child without telling anyone. This ensured that Luna would be recognized as his legitimate wife. Not bad, Theodore finally said as he nodded in approval. He already knew about this class, so he didn't plan to ask any further. You are an inner heir from today. Find 4 of your stepbrothers and sisters who are willing to follow you and create your own team. Yes, Father, John nodded with determination. You may leave. Understood, John bowed down and then quickly left. At least he is not bad, Mike, who could read his father's thoughts, said. Yeah, Theodore said. George, send Iris and the guy she chose. We will begin with them. He called out to George, who was outside. Kaichi. Lately, I had been really considering doing a full rewrite. The novel has too many plot holes due to me forgetting things. Most of them are pretty easy to fix. Some arcs needs reordering. It also has some characters that are not needed, and some others who I really wanted to add but forgot. Too bad I am just too lazy to do so. Just a little rant. Enjoy. Chapter 471. Light Avatar. Level 0. Class, Manhunter E. Authority, 4. Strength, 20. Intelligence, 11. Agility, 22. Luck, 10. Charm, 22. Bloodline, none. Is it good? Juju, who touched the slate, asked nervously, looking both at her father and Iris, who stood to the side. As the leader of Juju's future unit, she was allowed to be here. Theodore, who slowly massaged his eyebrows, didn't know how to answer that. What was the problem with his offspring, damn it? What kind of skills do you have? He asked. Tracking, slit throat, men aggro, area sight, charm and enhanced senses, she said nervously. Oh, at least it is reasonable. Theodore sighed again. Although not on the strong side, she was very suitable for reconnaissance work. Shit, even his most useless daughter was far better than Luke, that stupid son of his. Do you like to hunt men or something? Mike was the one who asked with a frown. After witnessing more than 30 of his siblings, he began to notice the connection here. Unlike the previous ceremonies with the family heirs who grew up like plants in a greenhouse, only focusing on the family standard arts, the ones here came from very different backgrounds, and this showed a pattern. Roxy, who was a journalist, got an investigator, and a guy named Pan who grew up in a village got a farmer, for example. Ah! Juju blushed as she looked away nervously. I like to draw certain types of comics, so I usually try to stalk potential models. Certain types? Theodore asked. You mean that boy love shit you do as a side gig? He asked. He had read the report about her, especially her latest work, featuring a guy that looked eerily similar to Victor courting other sissy men. Thankfully, George warned her to stop it before she could publish it. Yes? She looked down as Iris eyed her. I see. Therefore sighed. I will arrange for you to go through a special recon training course later. Iris will tell you the details. You can leave, Theodore finally said, nodding to Iris. Yes. Thank you. Juju, who was very nervous, quickly left. Watching her leave, Theodore said next, allowing a young man to enter the tent. Roy, right? Theodore asked. Unlike his other offspring, he remembered this guy. George spoke many praises for him as he was the one who followed behind Laura and her friends to protect them that day. Yes. Esteemed father. Roy spoke nervously. He was really wary of his father, someone who could decide not only his but even the likelihood of his mother and sisters by a few words. How is your mother? Theodore asked, remembering that woman who was one of the few who refused him. Well, he was in an undercover operation back then, and he couldn't divulge his identity, and when he returned to check on her afterwards, she was already with others, 3 to be exact. She is fine, Roy replied. Got married? Theodore asked. No. Still in the business? Ah. No. She works as a waitress now. She didn't want to raise a family like that. Roy answered with a frown. He felt a little uncomfortable being questioned about his mother's dark past, and so was Iris. George told me she is in town. Yes, my younger sister has cancer, and Butler George offered to help her in return for me participating in this ritual, he replied. She is fine now, he quickly added. I am aware of that. Theodore lied. He had no idea. It was just that George was really the best butler one could ask for, taking care of things without having to ask him. Tell your mother that if she misses the old days, she can come to me and I will forgive her. Well, my mother has a very high self-esteem, you see. Roy phrased it nicely. His mother would never go to beg Theo Rowe to take her back, even though it was her fault. Indeed. Theodore sighed. She charged triple just to give him a job back then. But this was the thing that made him fall a little for her. A man would always seek that hard to get. Then I will ask you to arrange an accidental meeting between the two of us. Now that you are a player and can technically take her as a concubine and I. Father, can we get to the ceremony? Iris interrupted. You two can talk about your romantic life afterward, she said with annoyance. Her damn father was a real womanizer. Luna had barely given birth and he was going after someone else. Adding to that, Roy's mother was a real hottie, despite her age and giving birth to 4 children. Ah, right, Theodore sighed. Go forward then, put your hand on the slate. Yes, Roy, who was feeling awkward, nodded, and stepped up, touching the slate. Is shown immediately with bright light. Level 0. Class, Light Avatar, SSS. Authority, 9. Strength, 42. Intelligence, 34. Agility, 36. Luck, 20. Charm, 25. Bloodline, none. An avatar? Theodore raised one eyebrow. Avatar classes were really special and held a great potential for growth. If Roy had a full bloodline, he would definitely be eligible for an elite heir status. Is it bad? Roy asked with a frown. On the contrary, it is very strong. Theodore paused. Skills? Light beam, inverted polarity, light step, disintegration, disguise, true sight, and light veil, he said, not hiding anything. He felt that telling his father the truth here was the right thing to do. I have a little heat and light resistance as well. Oh. Theodore paused as he thought about something. I think we should let Grandma decide, Mike, who read his father's thoughts, said. About what? Roy asked. Giving you an elite heir status, Theodore replied. He really liked Roy, and this had nothing to do with him having something with his mother. Well, maybe a little, the woman knew her techniques. But doesn't that require me to have a pure bloodline or something? Roy asked. Iris, who was to the side, also had this question. That can be fixed, Theodore said as he relaxed a bit. Really? Iris didn't know that. It is a new discovery. Keep it a secret, as we can only fix very few people at the moment, Theodore said, sighing. Damn it, if the ancestor's heart didn't go missing, they might have been able to create many pills. For now, keep being in Iris's unit, but act as her vice commander. Is that okay with you? He turned to Iris. Of course, Iris nodded with a smile. Roy was a really dependable guy, and he deserved his own unit. Then it is settled. I will let George get you all the family rule books for the real heirs. Make sure to study them just in case. Yes, Roy nodded as he squeezed his hands. If he really became an elite heir, he would no longer have to worry about supporting his mother and sisters. And those girls might stop thinking about marrying some perverted young master. Now, before you leave, let's talk about your mother, Theodore said. Victor frowned. So it was really him. Light Avatar. Ha. For some strange reason, As he watched him through Mike's eyes, he didn't feel the hate he held from the past. On the contrary, this guy seemed not bad at all. In a matter of fact, the one he met back then might have something wrong with him, as he was extremely cold and detached, unlike the present one. Life really changed people, or maybe it was something else. Victor paused as he remembered what he learned about lords. In his past life, very few things were known about Roy, and if it were not for him digging around, he might never even have heard about his name. The young Light Lord. He knew only 3 facts about him. The first was that he was engaged to the Light Lord's daughter, who was some supreme beauty, and that he was very faithful to her. A few concubines here and there didn't count. The second was that he was not only a scion but also a very high-ranking one at that, maybe holding a fate of SSS or X. The third was that he was searching for something called the Light Gems for the Light Lord, forming a small sect of devout followers in the process. Now Victor could tell that they may be searching for sparks. Many things became clearer the more he learned about how things worked. For example, it was now clear that his damn father was the one covering for Roy back then. That's why the family didn't go after him after he killed Maurice. Right? Maurice, that depraved piece of shit, was in town. He saw him there watching the ceremony earlier. Victor suddenly felt a strange feeling. Could it be that destiny was meant to repeat itself? Without waiting any further, he closed his eyes and synced his souls. He needed to tell Lily to contact Lynn ASAP. Many things were at stake there. Where is Victor? Calvin, who sat on the couch in the living room, asked as his 2 escort soldiers Shue and Maria looked around vigilantly, as their worldviews were getting subverted. They were keeping their eyes on the little maid who brought in the drinks, then slowly retreated. As trained soldiers, they could tell that she had a weapon under her fluffy skirt, probably a baton of some sort. The little girl might also be a boy, but she would have to be some real hunk to hold something that big. He is out on business, Margaret replied. He might not return for the night. He promised to send a team to help me check that dungeon. Why didn't he send anyone? Ah, right. There was that. Margaret slowly remembered that there was such a thing. There was some trouble in the family, you see. He was called to go back quickly. Afterward, he was injured and I bet he totally forgot. She shrugged. Forgot? He has a lot of things on his mind, Margaret replied. Then can he send the team already? I can't keep control of the location for much longer, Calvin asked. He felt a little humiliated being forgotten about by his own grandson. But again, Victor was a damn heir to the von Weiss family. And if not for their familial relationship, he would have never been able to get into this highly fortified mansion. I will talk to. Margaret began to speak when she was interrupted by a little maid who ran to her side and whispered something in her ear. Oh, bring him here. Margaret raised one eyebrow and turned to Kelvin. You have some fine luck, she said. What? Calvin asked. You can ask him yourself. Victor is here, she said with a smirk as she turned to the room's door where a young man in a formal black suit walked in. Hubby. I missed you, Margaret said, not even caring enough to stand up. She just waved to him. Your grandfather had been waiting for you for an hour already. I thought you would spend your time at that brothel again with that Gloria. Ah, yes. Axel paused, realizing that all his movements were being tracked. Well, he expected as such. Wait, grandfather? He asked as he turned to face Calvin. All right, this guy was Elena's father. Do you plan to act like you don't recognize me now? Calvin frowned. Ah, no, I am just kidding. Axel scratched the back of his head as his eyes spotted Shue. This girl was not bad. It was just that she probably knew the original Victor as she was shooting him some real glares of disgust. I have no time for that. Calvin spat. He was getting really annoyed. When will you send the support team you promised me? Ah. Axel had no idea what they were talking about. The team can set out tomorrow morning. Margaret quickly helped him. Ah, good. Then send them. Axel shrugged. Good. I will leave Shue here for the night to depart with them if you don't mind, Kelvin said as he slowly stood up. Ah. Axel frowned, glancing at Margaret. She didn't even look at him. Okay, he said. You girls arrange a room for her? He told one of the little maids, trying to act as the master of the house. Yes, young master. The maid who stood near the door nodded, then quickly retreated. Then that's it. Grandfather, don't you care to join us for dinner? Margaret quickly interrupted him. No, I have a lot of things to do. Let's go, he told his guard as he stood up and walked out, leaving only Shue in the room. He was clearly very annoyed with Victor's attitude, and he couldn't really stay anymore in this mansion full of youthful girls. Ever since taking that pill, he began to get some strange urges that only a young man should have. That's why he left Shue here. He was going to some brothel right away. Then I guess it is just you, huh? Margaret smirked, looking at Shue. I will stay in my room until departure time if it is good with you. Shue replied immediately, glaring at Victor. You are no fun, Margaret sighed. Do what you like. Ask any of the maids, and they will gladly guide you. Okay then, if you excuse me, Shwe said, leaving the living room. She didn't like how Victor let Margaret do all the talking at all. How was the ceremony? Margaret asked as soon as the living room's door was closed. Do you need me to answer that? Axel replied with a question as he sat down opposite her. I don't have eyes in the family, you know. And about Gloria. I learned about it from my agents in the White Hotel. Oh, I don't think you should know about the ceremony then. Family secrets. Hee. Leaning fast, she smirked. Now, do you need something from me? She asked. Was that Abe a time traveler? He asked directly. Yes, we learned about it after we drugged him when we suspected there was something wrong about him. I was planning to drug you too. But you escaped at the right time, she said. Axel frowned. He could tell that there was something wrong with her answer, but could not tell what. You think I am a time traveler? He asked, regretting it immediately. Maybe he shouldn't have come here. I know for a fact that you are one, Margaret replied. You asking me about it is the best proof, and that green sun token is something Abe was, like you, very persistent about. So that's why you suspected me. Yup. Aren't you afraid I would try to get rid of you to hide the truth? He asked. Honey, I have seen things far more bizarre and dangerous than mere time travel, she smirked. And if I feared you, I wouldn't have reminded you to read the novels back at old Theo's mansion. I wanted you to figure it out yourself and make your choice. You were testing me? Axel gasped. Kinda, it was also a warning. We still didn't know how Abe, who was under our tight surveillance, got kidnapped, then returned like a crazed maniac, she said, turning serious. Ever since we learned the truth about Abe, we have been keeping track of any bizarre activities about the most profitable stocks and assets he told us about. And the market trends had already indicated that we were not the only ones with knowledge about the future. There are others? Yes. And some of them might be hunting for people like you, she said. Margaret shrugged. What do you want from me? He asked. Finally, he was not stupid. It was in his best interest to cooperate with her. Hell, if they wanted to harm him, they already had many chances, and his instinct was telling him that for now she could be trusted. I want you to write down everything that happened to you in the other timeline, and in return, I will give you the data that we got from Abe. Axel frowned as he thought for a moment. Fine, he sighed. And before that? Go try and hit on that girl, Shwe, nothing serious, just a comment or 2-inch, Margaret said. Since you are impersonating Victor, you have the responsibility to preserve his reputation. Chapter 472, Melody. Did you have to do that? Elise, who sat in the mansion's control room, asked with annoyance. Yes, Margaret, who observed the monitor in front of them, replied. But what if Victor gets angry? Elise asked. Margaret raised one eyebrow. Since when do you care about Victor's potential harem? I don't, Elise, who puffed her cheeks, said with a blushing face as she looked away. Don't worry, Shwe is not on that list, Margaret chuckled. If she was, he would have already snagged her back then when he first met her. Margaret spat. Look, it already started. Elise turned to look at the monitor where Axel, who went to have a talk with Shwe, just happened to push open the unlocked door and see the girl who just walked out of the shower naked. Damn, Elise was speechless. Why would a vigilante special ops soldier like Shwe keep the door of her room unlocked, and why would she walk out of the shower naked? Didn't she hear of the invention called a towel? The string of coincidences was just too absurd. I told you he's a scion, Margaret said as she watched Shwe begin to throw random things at Axel, who dodged them all. And a powerful one at that. So you really plan to make him your guinea pig? Elise asked in disbelief. Yup, he's just perfect for that, Margaret said. Now we just have to wait and see if Shwe would mention the dungeon raid to him and demand that he comes with them. Elise paused as she watched Axel overpower Shwe and push her down. This piece of shit acted fast. You want to see if there is anything precious there? Yup, Margaret said. On the other hand, if Shwe didn't invite him, I will do that tomorrow. And if he decided to refuse, I will cancel the entire thing, as it would mean that the dungeon might have some unforeseen danger, Margaret said. Despite Lily assuring me before that it is safe, one can never tell, as her information was obtained secondhand, she added. Although the girls were now powerful enough, with Victor not here, she didn't want them to be in any danger. That's a good way to use a scion, Elise nodded. Exactly. You just have to pay the right price. In Axel's case, a hot girl would suffice, Margaret said as she stretched her hand and turned off the monitor just as Shwe's struggle against Axel turned into kissing. The scene was turning +18 very fast, and little girls shouldn't watch that. Brother is really annoying, refusing to come shop with us, one little girl spat as they walked through the large mall. Yeah. What's so important with that family meeting of his anyway? The second said. And he even refused to introduce us to any of his siblings or cousins, the third pouted. He could at least ask his brother to introduce us to Mira. Stupid Roy. Yeah. Absolutely stupid. Now, how the hell are we going to carry all the stuff we plan to buy? Boom. One of the girls suddenly bumped into something and was pushed back, falling to the ground as she had just been discharged from hospital. Her body was a little weak. It was a large bald man in a black suit. He looked like some kind of gangster. The girls immediately ran to their sister's side as they looked at the man, yelling on purpose to attract attention. What's the meaning of this? One of them asked as she noticed 3 other men surrounding them. Please excuse us, one of the men said. Our young master just happened to notice you from above, one of the men said, pointing to a restaurant above. He was really amazed by your beauty and he sent me to offer you to have a meal with him. The girls looked at each other. They were not stupid. Maybe on some other date. We are busy now and our older brother is waiting for us in the parking lot. Oh. Then I will send one of the men to invite him too, the bald guard said. Now if you please, he gestured with one hand. What if we don't want to go? Another girl asked as she sent pleading looks toward a couple of pedestrians, but to her dismay, no one looked at them. Even the few mall security guys who passed them by just nodded amiably before walking away. What was this? A daylight kidnapping? Really? Was everyone involved? That's not an option, the guard said. The only option you have is to go the easy way or the hard way. The girls looked at each other. Can you at least spare our little sister? She just got out of the hospital and she is very sick. Look. The young Master Morris is in a bad mood today, so let's just get on with it. One other guard who was losing patience said from behind. You will not lose much anyway. Help. HEL, one of the girls began shouting as her sister started screaming in a coordinated manner. At the same time, they bolted in 3 different directions. Bang, bang, bang. The little girls were subdued almost immediately by the guards who grabbed them and pushed them to the floor then tied them up. The guards' movements were so smooth that it was clear they had done this many times before. The hard way, huh? One of the guards said, slapping one of the girls' faces. Hey, don't damage the goods, his boss scolded him. The young master likes to tame him by himself. You can enjoy your hobbies after he finishes with them. Sorry, boss. Now let's leave before the talisman's power wears off. Yes, boss? The men grabbed the tied and gagged girls and quickly headed to a nearby VIP elevator where they pressed the button for the top floor. No matter how hard the girls struggled, it was futile. They could only watch in horror as the elevator rose up, finally reaching the top floor. What was behind the door was a long corridor with quite a few doors that the guards who carried them skipped to finally reach a gilded door that had 2 guards standing outside. Got the goods? One of them asked. Affirmative. Boss, they are back, the guard at the door said as he pushed the door open and walked into the lavish restaurant cabin. Young master. There was no one around. What's the problem? One of the other guards asked. Did the young master leave somewhere? The leader asked. No, the other guard who was at the door said as he hurried to check under the couches and behind the curings. Thinking for a moment, he hurried to the only window in the room and checked it. It was firmly shut and locked from the inside. Are you sure? The leader asked as he threw the girl in his hand onto one of the couches and started checking by himself. Affirmative. He was just so upset after today's visit to Elder Theodore's mansion, and after he sent you to get the girls, he continued to drink alone. The men looked at each other. Go check the surveillance tapes. Boss? We already switched the entire floor off, remember? Shit. What to do? Call his phone. Right? One moment, one guard said, taking his phone and making a call. Beep. 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 The number you are calling is not reachable. The phone must be turned off, the guard said nervously. Should I call the family? Let's check them all first, just in case, the leader said. If anything were to happen to the young master, Master Owen would skin us alive. At that thought, all the guards shivered. They just threw the girls to the ground and left to continue their search. After that, the room was silent for 5 minutes until one of the girls managed to finally wiggle her phone out of her pocket and call her brother, who was put on speed dial using her nose. No one replied. Separately, she called again. It took him a while to pick up. Melody, what's up? I told you I am busy, he said. There was a strange sound of someone squeaking in the background. She couldn't talk due to her mouth being taped, so the moment he picked up, she could only try to make as much noise with her nose as possible. Melody? Is something wrong? Bitch, suddenly someone shouted. It was a guard who returned to recheck the room and just happened to see the girl and the phone. He hurried and kicked Melody away before grabbing the phone. Who are you? What did you do to my sister? Across the phone, he could hear someone shouting. The guard said nothing. I don't know who you are. But I promise you, if anything were to happen to my sisters, I will. The guard didn't let him continue as he squeezed the cheap plastic phone in his hand hard, breaking it. He threw it away and then faced the terrified girls with furious eyes. You really had to go and piss me off, he said as he started to approach them. I guess the young master wouldn't mind if I educate you. Boom. His head exploded as a masked girl appeared out of nowhere and kicked it. It was as if she had always been hidden in the corner. Damn, can't those people just leave, she spat as she moved her finger, and all the ropes tying the little girls were untied. Escape quickly. Take the 3rd corridor to the left, it will lead you into a public area, she said as strangely enough her shape began to wiggle and poof, she disappeared as if she was made out of smoke. It took the shocked girls a moment to realize what just happened. Not caring about the corpse, they quickly removed the tape that gauged their mouths and left the room, heeding the girls' advice. Between them, only Melody had a strange expression on her face. Although the sound was different, for some strange reason she could tell that the girl who helped them was definitely the same one who gave her the miraculous candy that cured her. What happened? Monica, who drove the sexy red car, asked. Moments earlier she noticed that Lin in the back seat closed her eyes as if she was focusing on something. Just this bastard's men seem to have kidnapped some girls. I had to help them escape, Lin replied, looking at the drugged and tied-up young man who was thrown under the seat. Morris, did you make sure to leave no trace? Monica frowned. The operation earlier depended on them acting as discreetly as possible. Don't worry, that spectator spirit summons was something Lily taught me about. With the current technology level, it is untraceable, she said. With that summon, she was able to exert 10% of her power from afar. It was very suitable for her. Now let's hurry back to the base. We need to hand this douchebag to Alpha's team, then hurry back to the mansion. I will have to go on a mission in the morning. What's wrong? Aerith, who was sitting beside Victor at the breakfast table, asked. Nothing, just thinking about a few things. Victor, who was watching Lin's live feed, the operation to take out Morris was going on perfectly. Lately, I have been feeling a little bit suffocated. I want to go around the city for some tourism. Would you care to take me around? He asked. He needed to go around town and set a few things up. No time. Let Lyra do it. Aerith escaped as usual, turning to Lyra, who was stuffing her mouth with food. The girl could really eat. Ah. But I think it is a good idea, Rosette interrupted her. And why don't you take Meryl and Massel with you? I think it is time you two stop ignoring each other, she said, first looking at Lyra, then at the other side where the fat elf who finally managed to heal up was sitting. Lady Rosette, Massel said. No offense, but I really can't stand your daughter. I am the one who can't stand you, filthy elf. How dare you, peasant? Enough, Rosette said in a very particular tone that made everyone at the table shut up, including Victor, who for a flash saw many death fate threads spread from her before quickly retracting. This woman was scary. Hopefully, his father will be able to tame her once they get back. Well, it would not be his problem by that point. Sorry. Both Massel and Lyra apologized. Mother, why don't you take us around? It was Meryl who asked with sparkling eyes. Her relationship with her mother had improved greatly in the past few days. I think I can take a few days off, Rosette, who thought for a moment, finally said. Where do you want to go? She asked. I want to visit the local markets. Victor was the one who replied. I never got the chance that other day, and I really want to check out the local delicacies. OCH, he screamed as Aerith pinched him. This girl seemed to have gained the power to read his mind. What about you? Rosette ignored him and turned to Meryl. Ah. I don't know. Meryl bit her lip and looked at Massel. Seeing it, Rosette nodded her eyebrow. She really liked everything about this sensible daughter of hers except for one thing. That fat elf. I want to see the city walls. I heard they are magnificent, Massel said nervously. Although he felt very conflicted, he had to fulfill the Lord's orders and spy on the humans. The Lord's commands were absolute. They are. But they are off limits. Rosette just frowned at him and then sighed. I guess I will be the one who will plan the trip then. Hope you don't mind, she finally decided. I don't. Victor, who was about to say something, suddenly gasped and then began to cough as the piece of meat he was eating got stuck in his throat. Victor, Aerith quickly hit his back. I am fine, he said quickly after he coughed up the thing in his throat. I need to check the restroom, he said as he jumped from his seat and ran away, making Amira, who was seated on his other side, look at him with a worried gaze. He is going to puke, Lyra said, reassuring her. Lyra, Rosette scolded. But that's why you shouldn't talk while chewing, she said. Victor, who ran to the restroom, didn't care. The moment he entered and closed the door, he immediately sat down and closed his eyes to thoughtfully check what Lin had just seen. From between the little girls she had just saved, the one called Melody was someone whom he easily recognized despite her age. How couldn't he? She was his wife from the other timeline. What kind of crazy coincidence was this? Spoiler. Yup, it was a big reveal. Even I didn't see it coming. But it fit the current lore perfectly. Enjoy. Collapse. Chapter 473, Return? So, it was my uncle who sent you, Lily asked as she tilted her head just in time, dodging the poison dagger that came flying at her from behind one of the tall columns that littered the large endless corridor. How do you know that? The assassin who threw 2 more daggers asked in shock as he moved swiftly from behind on cover to another. Who told you? I don't. You just told me, she said as she flicked her hand. And in the next moment the assassin who just arrived at his new cover felt something was wrong. Why was he lying on the ground? Who did that headless body belong to? The moment he understood what happened, he was already dead. Lily sneered as she slowly approached the corpse and sprayed something on it, making it dissolve at a visible rate. Do you believe me now? She turned and asked Julian, who slowly materialized from behind one of the columns and walked out. His class was really amazing, and until now only Lily has managed to find him using the soul invisibility skill. I never doubted you, he lied. Ever since Lily told him that their uncle was planning to kill them, he had some doubts. Sure, his uncle was a douchebag, but would he really send assassins after his nephew and niece? The answer was clearly yes. Why did you kill this guy? We could have interrogated him or at least asked him about the others, he asked. That wouldn't work, those guys are pretty tight-lipped. If I hadn't used that soul gas on him earlier, he wouldn't have even revealed anything, she spat. And there are 12 others. The family assassination teams are usually composed of 12 agents, she clarified, knowing many things about the family's internal protocols. Then there should be 11 others, Julian corrected her. No, 12, Lily spat as she eyed the corpse that had completely decomposed into thin air, leaving nothing. Eric, that stupid old fox, would definitely send an agent to kill them before they leave. That's mean. They are his own loyal men, right? Julian frowned. In this case, the only thing better than a tight-lipped loyal subordinate is a tight-lipped dead one, Lily smirked. Now let's go, we shouldn't stay in the main tunnels for long as it will definitely alarm the rats, she said as she began walking toward a side door. Right? Good point, Julian said as he quickly followed her. He couldn't help but remember the huge ugly rats he had to fight earlier as he was searching for Lily. Thankfully, due to his soul sonar skill, he could easily dodge huge rat swarms and managed to find his sister who was nearby. Giving the huge tunnel one last look before leaving it, he sighed. He really couldn't believe it at first, but, in fact, this entire dungeon was a big rat-infested otherworldly sewer that spanned miles. Lily had already told him that dungeons were in fact fragments from other worlds, and this made him wonder what world was this place a part of. The universe was a really huge place. Where are we going now? He asked as he shook his head. To the boss's room, she said, feeling the need to vent some anger. Already? Julian asked. The family's elders would definitely send a retrieving agent with a bloodline tracking plate, so if we don't go there now, we would lose the chance to participate, she said. Those guys would never let us go into danger, and I am not going to miss out on the EXP points, she spat. Lately, she had been feeling a little restless. Yesterday, Victor got to sink his soul again, so he told her about his new horny wife. Although she felt very annoyed and made that very clear to him, she understood his circumstances at that point, so she didn't bother deciding to judge that girl once Victor brought her back. The thing was that afterward, he told her about Roy and asked her to send some news to the girls to make them kidnap some guy from his family, so she did that. As she talked to them, she couldn't help but feel that they were hiding something from her, something very important. But what? Victor, who didn't get much sleep last night, frowned, totally ignoring the carriage's rocking movement, his mind totally occupied by Melody's circumstances. At first, he was shocked. He didn't expect her to be in Vane City. In fact, he never even expected her to be born yet, as he married her a couple of decades after the reckoning, and she didn't seem that old back then. But thinking about it, he always knew the girl had a few secrets, some of which she never told him about. In fact, she never talked about her past. And thinking about it again, he suspected that this girl might not be the one he knew. She could be her mother or even her grandmother. Daughters look a lot like their mothers, right? And naming a girl like her grandmother was not that far-fetched. He was wrong. Last night, after Lynn returned to the mansion, she told Alpha's intelligence team about what happened as per protocol. So they quickly investigated the girl and gave her back the report. There, Victor was absolutely shocked to know that the three girls were Roy's half-sisters. How could it be? Thinking about it, Victor began to recall what happened back then when Roy, who looked a little different with a pointy beard and a hooked mustache, entered his house. She was already tied and gagged, screaming something. He thought her actions were her trying to beg for mercy, but he didn't expect that she might have recognized Roy. The thing was, Roy didn't even spare her a glance when he ordered his men to get rid of her, as she was useless. It was as if he didn't even recognize her in the first place. Could this have something to do with the Light Lord? Victor could only think of a few answers. The first possibility was that Roy was a cold-blooded evil guy, but that wouldn't make sense as his destruction of the Von Weiss family came after Morris raped his sister. And the family report Victor found indicated that he was a very honest and hot-blooded youth. The other explanation was that Roy either got his personality changed due to some effect or he was possessed by something. A demon or someone else. Victor was inclined to believe it was that later, and maybe Melody, back then, knew something about it as her eyes were filled with grief looking at Roy back then. But then again, wouldn't the Light Lord notice his adoptive son being adopted? Unless it was arranged by him. Victor frowned again. There just were too many variables here to tell. You seem a little absent-minded? Meryl, who sat in the lavish carriage next to Massel, asked Victor, who sat opposite to her next to Amira and his mother-in-law. Since last night, everyone could tell that he was a little off. Nothing, he sighed. Just wondering how this world is very different from my own. It is like a medieval setting here, he said, changing the subject. Medieval? Meryl frowned. Our original world has different rules, Rosette explained. We call the architectural style that is similar to this place medieval. Technology there is so advanced that we live and work in tall glass towers, she smiled. Really? Massel frowned. He didn't believe her. It is the truth, Victor said. We have many things there that can't be explained in this world. They wouldn't even work here, Victor said, taking his smartphone from his storage ring. This is? Meryl asked. My smartphone. It is like an artifact that lets me access all the knowledge in the world and connect to anyone I want, Victor said. I can even watch porn on. Oh, Rosette smacked his head. So they really finished developing this thing? Rosette, who smacked his head, asked as she grabbed the phone and flipped it around. This technology was not that strong when she left. Yeah. Everyone has one of those nowadays. They are very versatile. Even the governments use them to spy on people and such, Victor explained as he rubbed his head. Too bad those things don't work here, he added as he wondered if there was a way to make phones work after the reckoning. Although a similar device was developed later on using artifacts and such, it was never really that good, only able to make calls and send some visual info through a bulky crystal that could be attached to it. Adding to that, it was super expensive with only royals, rich merchants, and corrupt officials being able to buy it. Hearing him, Massel made sure to remember all of that. He needed to report it to his lord. Not bad, Rosette nodded as she gave the phone back to Victor. Mother-in-law, if you get the chance to go back, would you do it? Victor, who tried to turn on the phone before failing and putting it back in his ring, asked. I will, Rosette said with a clear resolve. Your master can do it? She asked. Yes. The Lord told you? Victor asked. He expected as such. Yes. You should have asked me beforehand, she sighed. I planned to. You were very busy and then the thing with the demon happened. He shrugged. Aha. Rosette eyed him. Will it be a one-way trip? Yes, my master told me that opening the gate will be very hard and he will not be able to sustain it for long, Victor lied. In fact, he was not sure himself, but in any case, he was not going to let anyone know of that gate even if it worked. We have discussed this hypothetically before, Rosette sighed. Including me, Mirai and Master Ariana will definitely agree to return. As for the others, most likely not, she added. Why? Victor frowned. He never got to meet the others. Life here is better for them. Most of them already have families and important jobs. Back there, they are just servants who spent their lives managing the mines, Rosette replied with a sigh. Her relationship with the other survivors was clearly not good. What about Aerith and Lyra? Victor asked. Will your master be able to take them too? She asked. They had a bloodline from this world after all, and she feared that the world might reject them. He should be like Amira is coming too, Victor replied, petting the head of the little girl who was watching the streets from the window beside him. But just in case, I will ask him later, he said. Since neither had enshranked fate, things should be okay, and although he was a little worried for Aerith, he believed that she would be fine as she was his wife and he could always hide her in the cauldron if anything went wrong. You do that, and you should ask the girls if they want to go with you in the first place, Rosette sighed. We'll do later, Victor nodded, turning to Meryl. Will you also return with us? You were from there originally. He was not going to leave her here, not with the Sun Lord after her. Ah, Meryl hesitated, looking at the fat blonde elf beside her. Can I come? Massel asked. This was important to his mission. Ah. If Meryl does, Victor said, clicking his tongue, he should really find a way to turn Meryl a little rabid like his stupid wives. He needed to teach her how to control her man. Ah. I am going then, Meryl said, blushing a little while cursing at Victor in her heart. Then it is settled, Victor smirked as he looked out of the window. Where are we going anyways, he asked. Well, since it is our first outing together, I thought it would be good to take you guys shopping for some clothes first to get something decent, she said. After that, we will grab a meal at the Stormborn restaurant, then go attend the Ethereal Wind auction. Wah! The one where all the expensive things get sold? Massel asked in shock. Despite being an elf, as someone in the royal family, he had definitely heard about this auction, that many nobles in the elven court bragged about going there and buying something, including one of his sisters. Too bad he never got the chance, as his royal father forbade him from going into the Storm Lord's lands before because he was the only male heir. Yes, in fact, the only reason I could take a day off was because I was invited here as a VIP, Rosette said. Aerith and Lyra will meet us there after they finish with their missions. Really? Victor asked in surprise while cursing inwardly. With Aerith there he might not be able to move freely. Yes, many important people and VIPs will be there, including Lyzarus, so make sure to behave once we get there, Rosette warned him. Oh. Sure, Victor smirked again. Lyzarus was just the guy he wanted to meet and was planning to go visit him a few days later. Who would have thought he would get a chance so soon? Although it might be tricky, if he planned his moves carefully it would be OUCH. Rosette smacked him. Her guts were telling her that taking Victor there would be a huge mistake. But really, what's the worst that could happen? A kaichi. A slow chapter. Another auction. Enjoy. Chapter 474, The Auction House Mayhem 1. So, I have been wanting to ask, is that dungeon Shui going to conquer an unexplored one? Axel, who was in a bathrobe, asked. Opposite him, Elise, who heard him, looked at Margaret with some appreciation in her eyes. Yes, Margaret shrugged, not even lifting her eyes to look at him. She had a stack of papers in front of her. Due to her pregnancy, she had been doing her part of the business from the study at home. How are you sure it is a dungeon? Wouldn't that location only have some unnatural phenomena and such? We have concrete info, including the dungeon's gate, Margaret replied. The source. Not something you can handle. Oh. This is outside of the family's network, he asked. The family should never know. Axel raised one eyebrow. He was not stupid, and this brother of his might have more secrets than he had ever expected. I want in, he said, making Elsa's eyes sparkle. Go then. Just make sure not to reveal a thing to the family. Margaret replied as she signed a document, then put it to the side and grabbed another one. They seem to be regarding some land acquisition. It might also be a good opportunity for you to be away for a while and let Olaf worry a bit. Yes, he nodded. I want Gloria to come, Axel said after some hesitation. That girl gave herself to him and he would take care of her. Hearing him, Margaret paused. Look. I know you are impersonating Victor and everything, she said as she looked at him disgustingly. But It is not appropriate to discuss your sexual fantasies with us, especially with Elise here, she spat, making Elise blush and look away. And making a woman reach that requires skill that, unlike the real Victor, I doubt you have. Axel paused for a moment before finally getting what she meant. I didn't mean that, damn it, he spat. This girl's thought process was too lewd, even for him. And she was definitely bullying him. I meant that I want to bring her along to make her a player, he corrected himself. As he ignored her smirk, if he overreacted and tried to prove himself, he would be playing into her hand. If you can make sure she keeps the secret, feel free to make her come, Margaret replied, making Elise, who was blushing, blush even further. I will make sure she does, Axel spat angrily, realizing his mistake just after he said it. Sounds confident, hopefully you are not just all words, Margaret smirked, jabbing at him again. He decided not to reply this time. As her brother-in-law, he couldn't do a thing or he would be the one appearing like a pervert. This girl was a bully. Margaret raised one eyebrow. He was no fun. Whatever. If George asked you about it, tell him that your grandfather is asking you to check the location or something for some business. And it would not be strange for Victor to bring a lover or two along for something like that, she explained, deciding to stop messing around. Good idea, Axel nodded. Damn, his brother's pervert persona was really useful. Since you were going, I should show you this, Margaret thought for a moment, then grabbed a file from a desk drawer and threw it at him. He quickly grabbed the folder, hesitated for a moment, then flipped it open. Inside there was a photo of a strange green jade key. This is? He asked. Jade skeleton key, if you find it, keep it and don't show it to the family. If you get more than one, I will take them off your hands at a good price, she replied seriously. What is it for? He asked. Not sure. According to Victor, some good opportunities will be opened very soon, only the ones holding those keys will be able to enter, she said. It will be very dangerous, she added, warning him not to think of keeping one for his harem. Does the family know about them? The higher-up had been collecting them for years. Officially they should be turned into the player council or something, but she shrugged. I understand, he sighed. His brother sure knew too many secrets. It was as if he too was some kind of a regressor. Why are you contacting me? The young man, through the mirror, asked as he yawned. It was still early in the morning. Didn't we tell you to be careful from now on? Young Master Sixth, I have something very important to report, Max, who was sitting on a bed in a cheap motel room, replied, ignoring the corpse of the prostitute on the ground. What? It is just like this, the awakening artifact I mentioned before was real, Max quickly said as he began to tell him what happened with him at the ceremony, making sure not to miss any detail, including Victor's behavior. Oh, hearing him, the young master was no longer sleeping. Well, due to the mirror only showing a shadow, Max couldn't be sure. That's everything that happened. I am not sure about the others, but the 5 guys who chose to work with me all had authority ranging from 5 to 7. I will send the final report about them once I finish making them tell me all their skills. Max finished his report. The young master frowned. This report had too much new info. Are you sure the artifact was a mirror? Yes, although not sure of how it worked, it had something to do with the alignment of the stars, Max quickly replied. I tried asking my father casually afterward, but he refused to tell me anything. And I didn't want to insist. The young master nodded, lost in thought. The only thing is that he seems to have informed Mike about it. Max added. That's natural, Mike had been chosen to be the next patriarch. What? Max gasped, he had no idea. When? It was Anne's decision, but it is yet to be announced. We don't know what they are waiting for, but it might have something to do with not wanting to antagonize Bruce, who wants his grandson to take that seat. Max swallowed. He had no idea. No wonder the young master's plan changed. Don't worry, you will also benefit from this. Despite your shaky relationship with him, Mike is still your brother, the young master said. Just try to be careful not to antagonize him from now on. I understand. Max squeezed his fist hard. That position should have been his. Should I investigate Victor further? He asked, clearly this was the thing he was mostly concerned about. Are you sure no one else heard what he said? I can't be sure. But his voice was very faint and many people were screaming, Max replied, clearly feeling that this might be a trap. The young master paused. Should I confront him and use the info to control him? Or should I tell father? If this is a trap by father to find out if I am a spy, not speaking would be problematic, Max, who was not stupid at all, said. The young master didn't reply, as if weighing his options. This is troublesome. You mean young master? Max frowned. That guy might hold some info that we want, so making the family get to him would bring us problems. Oh. Then. Let's bet on time, the young master finally said after thinking it thoroughly. Just to be sure, try to collect a DNA sample from him, this way if it was a trap you could simply say that you wanted to confirm it before telling the family. And if he really turned out to be a fake? Tell your father directly. By that time our agents would have investigated him, the young master smirked. Good point. For now, focus on collecting info about Iris and her team and also find out what your little sister's class and states are. I will, Max nodded. Don't contact us by yourself in the near future. Not unless something great were to happen. And your reward for the info will be issued as soon as they are confirmed. I understand, Max replied with a frown, then watched the mirror go dim. He quickly collected it in his ring, then sighed as he headed to the dead prostitute's corpse and pulled the dagger that was struck in her chest. Immediately the gloomy room returned to its usual appearance. It was as if some kind of veil was lifted. Max smirked, putting the ceremonial knife into his storage ring and then watching it blend with his skin before he took his phone and made a call. Send the family cleaning team. I was a little excited and went a little overboard again, he told his butler on the other side. Affirmative, young master, the reply came quickly as if the other side had already known what to expect. So this is what an otherworldly auction house looks like. Victor, who was dressed in a new maroon suit, nodded as he followed his mother-in-law to climb the grand stairs leading to a 7-story building, one of the few this high in the city. You speak as if it is any different from the one on Earth, Rosette spat. Stop making trouble and follow me, she said as they finally reached the gate. The 2 guards who were stationed there immediately kneeled. Lady Rosette. She nodded to them and walked in, followed by Meryl, Massel, Victor, and Amira, who was holding his hand. The golden inlaid wooden structure inside was not bad, a bit too extravagant for Victor's taste though, especially all the golden Gothic arcs that filled the ceiling. It was as if the owner wanted people to know how rich he was. As soon as they crossed the door, more than 10 servants who stood on both sides bowed down and a young man quickly ran toward them. Is Aerith here yet? Rosette asked. Not yet, Your Highness, you are the first to arrive, he said. The auction will not start for another hour, he added, making Rosette glare at Victor. It was all because of this guy who kept checking the women at the clothing stores earlier, forcing her to drag him here quickly. Then lead us to our seating area, she sighed. Yes, the young man replied as he gestured them with his hand. Wait, I want to sell something, is it possible? Victor, who was behind, suddenly asked. What do you want to sell? Rosette frowned. Some trinkets that I have. I think they might fetch a good price and have been meaning to sell them, Victor shrugged. Rosette glared at him. You know that this place only sells the best goods, right? She asked, making the young man who was planning to refuse Victor nod. Don't worry, the things I am offering are otherworldly, he clarified. Rosette raised an eyebrow as she got his idea. Fine. Lead him to the appraiser's office, she told the young man who was hiding his look of disdain. Ah, the young man stuttered. Right away, he said, gesturing for an old servant who was following behind him to lead Victor to the appraiser's office. Stay with Aunt Rosette. We'll catch up quickly, Victor told Amira, waiting for her to nod obediently before quickly hurrying after the old servant. He was quickly led downstairs through a maze-like structure until they reached a certain door that the servant knocked on. Enter, a voice from inside said, allowing the servant to quickly open the door and invite Victor in. Inside there was a simple office setup with an appraising table in the center. An old man with a pointy goatee wearing a monocle was sitting behind it inspecting some kind of a book. In front of him was a young man clothed in a black robe that hid his features, standing nervously waiting for his goods to be appraised. Master, this young man was sent by Lady Rosette to sell something, the servant quickly declared. Oh, please sit down and show me your turn, the appraiser said, nodding to Victor before returning to his work. Victor just nodded back, then sat down on a couch to the side, casually checking both the appraiser and the young man. The appraiser was your typical hidden expert that you may find in every auction house, nothing special. Just an appraiser. The young man, who Victor didn't even care about at first, was something else entirely. Name, Kuraztar. Level, 55. Class, Bright Knight. Authority, 11. Bloodline. Blue Dragon AA. Fate. Fate's power, S. Scion. Defined fate. Error Science has no defined fate's world rule. Destiny list, 10 order points to unveil. A Scion? Well, in a big auction like this, it was not a surprise to find a Scion or two. Many treasures trade hands here after all. But, wait. Victor frowned as he read the young man's name, Kuraztar. Where did he hear that name before? He was positive he had seen it. Maybe. Victor almost gasped. Right, this name was in Tulip's appraisal. The name of one of her destined husbands. But this was a different world. Could it be another guy with a different name? Victor didn't hesitate as he paid 10 order points to reveal Kuraz's destiny list. Destiny list. Earth Fate, help Altair V kill Zifar the Great. Self-set, save my sister from the slavers. Buy her from the Dark Auctiona. Self-set, sell the useless stuff I got at a good price to gather enough money. A. Self-set, find a strong wife, preferable a sadist like my late mother. A. Self-set, revenge against Lorda Orpak for stealing my demon hunting sword. A. Warning. Due to world rules, all destinies are capped to A. EH. No mention of Tulip, but kill Zifar? With Altair V? Wasn't T the guy also on Tulip's harem list? Very strange. Would Tulip come here or the opposite? Victor had no idea. And that name Lorda Orpak, it was also familiar. Ah, right, it was the girl who was blending in with the demons at the Sun Temple. Destiny was a really strange thing. Victor kept a deep frown as he watched the young man take a few pieces of stuff from his cheap-looking storage ring and let the appraiser go through them. They were mostly precious stones, some talismans, and skill books. It was clear that he was strapped for cash. Sadly, most of his things weren't even worth the appraiser's time, with only a few that got accepted. Thinking about it for a moment, Victor's eyes began to twinkle as he changed his plan. At first, he was only planning to sell some dragon bones here, then use them as anchor points for their fate tracker to find the rich people in the city and rob them before he escaped this world. Although he was not sure what was going on, he had some other thoughts. This guy might be a little helpful. He just waited until the young man finished putting his goods into action, then squeezing his fist he turned to leave. At that moment Victor made sure to give the young man's face a good look as he made his way to the door, leaving the room. The moment the door was closed, the appraiser turned to face Victor. This way he began to speak but was interrupted as the young man pushed the door and walked back in. Yes, the appraiser, who was a little disturbed, asked. I have one more thing, the young man said, squeezing his fist. It is a family's heirloom. You will have to wait until I attend to this young man first, the appraiser said, angrily pointing at Victor. It is okay, Victor, who sat back down, said, waving his hand. I am not in a hurry. The appraiser nodded to him, then turned to Quartz. Let's see what you have, he spat. Curious nodded, approaching the table and taking a box, not from his storage ring but from his pants. Was it always there? This is. The appraiser's expression changed as soon as he looked at the box. He could see nothing. No appraising information at all. It is a very strange locked box that I inherited. It can never be put into a storage device. I only know that a world-changing treasure is inside of it, but I can't open it, and no one I asked could do that. Something to do with authority, he said, making Victor, who was acting nonchalantly earlier, turn and look at the box with interest. Oh, the appraiser nodded as he began flipping the strange-looking box made from black metal. He shook it slightly, and indeed there was the sound of something inside of it. He tried to put it in his storage ring, and indeed he failed. How much will you give me for this? The young man asked. I can't say. You will have to wait until after the auction, the appraiser said after some hesitation. Although he didn't know what this box was, he was sure that many important figures would be interested. Ah, like with the rest of the stuff, I will send you the payment for it after the auction. I understand, the young man nodded, then after hesitating for a moment as if he was reluctant to give up the box, he turned to leave. I will leave it in your care, he said as he opened the door and walked out, closing it right behind him. The appraiser was lost in thought for a moment before he put the box away and turned to face Victor. How can I help you? I have a few things here for sale. Hope you don't mind giving them a look, Victor smiled as he stood up and approached the table. He didn't know if his plan was going to work, but setting things in motion was never a bad thing. And this would defiantly solve some of his problems. Yup, the young man never returned, and the one who just put Ziffer's treasure box on auction was none other than Victor in disguise. Chapter 475, The Auction House Mayhem 2. Wife, when did you arrive? Victor exclaimed as soon as he entered the VIP balcony. It was huge and had 9 chairs overlooking a large, 3-story tall hall below. Rosette, Massel, Meryl, Aerith, Lyra and Amira were the only ones there. Just now, Aerith, dressed in an elegant dress with a silky shawl tied around her head to cover the horn, replied as she patted the empty chair right beside her, gesturing for him to sit. Where were you? She asked as she watched him sit down and hand Amira, who was sitting on the other side, some candy that he had just gotten. Just selling a few things to earn some pocket money, he shrugged as he eyed the shawl. She didn't want others to know how horny she was, but he knew the truth. 45 minutes just to sell a few things? Lyra, who sat on the other side of the balcony, asked before he could make a very inappropriate comment. She seemed to have arrived with Aerith. Ah, yeah. I also spent a few minutes in the hall downstairs and did some socializing. He smirked. In fact, after putting the things he wanted to sell on auction, he took the time to go around the auction house, mapping the place to make his movement easier afterwards. He was not sure if his plan would work, but he did promise himself to always be extra prepared. I see. Lyra just glared at him for a moment before looking away toward the stage downstairs where many people were taking their seats, including Kira's, who were sitting in the back trying to look inconspicuous. Victor just ignored him for now and decided to map the main hall just in case. Its design was quite traditional, with the audience sitting below a grand stage. Above them, many VIP balconies were scattered around, divided into 3 levels. Rosette's balcony was on the highest story, with only one balcony above it, probably reserved for the Storm Lord. Thankfully it was empty, or Victor would have never dared to pull off anything here. In the balconies below he could see many fancily dressed people, including some elf nobles who were glaring at Massel like he was some kind of a traitor. He kept ignoring them with pride in his eyes. He was on a secret mission for the Sun Lord after all. Opposite to Rosette's balcony there were 4 others. 2 of them were already occupied by the Lord's 2 other disciples, Lazarus and Atma. They seemed to have already arrived. Atma was alone, but Lazarus had a sizable entourage that included a familiar face, that girl Niga who was shooting glares at Victor as if she couldn't wait to jump and kill him. Naturally, he waved at her while smiling. She almost exploded, but Lazarus grabbed her and pushed her to her chair while shooting Victor a glare. Stop messing around, Rosette, who sat to his right after Amira, scolded after watching the exchange. You are no fun, Victor sighed. All the fun you are having might bite you in the ass someday, she spat back. What kind of drug did you use on Naga, by the way, to make her surrender herself to you in the carriage that day? She asked, making Aerith, who sat beside him, naturally grab his hand and begin to pinch it. My charm is all the drugs I need, Victor claimed. He expected Lyra to make a report. Look how Aerith already can't let go of me, he said, raising his hand, making Aerith pull hers back and look away quickly. Your charm would never erase someone's short-term memories, Rosette spat. Oh, really? Victor paused. His real charm could do that, but it also caused people to lose more than their memories. Anyway, it seemed like Niga made an official complaint. No idea about that. Maybe that happened because I was too rough with her. Rosette just glared at him. Lazarus is a dangerous guy, you better not antagonize him, she sighed. Too late for that warning, Victor shrugged. Don't antagonize him anymore, she corrected herself. I am not an idiot, he finally said. Rosette sighed again, then looked away, shaking her head. This guy was as stubborn as his father. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand auction. A charming female auctioneer finally entered the stage and announced, making everyone look at the stage. She was rather charming, wearing a red revealing dress and an expensive necklace on her ample chest. Sorry for the delay, it is just like always, many of our guests brought forward superb treasures that they wanted to sell, so we had to appraise them before we could arrange everything. She clarified, ignoring the men who were inspecting every inch of her alluring body. A half-elf, ha, Victor whispered. Yes, Aerith to his side nodded, feeling a little thankful that he didn't seem very interested like the elf prince, Massel, who couldn't take his eyes off her slightly pointy ears and huge chest that no elf could have. It was as if he was looking at some kind of forbidden fruit. Half-elves get persecuted in the elven lands and hated in the south, so the Storm Lord's domain is the best place for them to live. I see, he nodded. He already learned this from his 2 new elf maids. Now for our first-time guests, let me remind you of the rules, the auctioneer said. You can bid by adding as much as you can, and payments can only be done by system coins or their equivalent in GM or storm coins. We don't accept elven ones here, be mindful of that. We also have to warn you against threatening others. Let's be civil here or we will have to ban you for life. She spoke and explained how the auction would work as she watched most of the late guests arrive. Many of the people who were scurrying around socializing also began to settle in their seats. Now that we are done with the formalities, let's start. I hope you will enjoy this night's collections, she said, then clapped her hands. Our first collection for tonight is titled Treasures from the Lands of the Dwarves, she said as 2 female dwarves pushed forward a tray with many covered trinkets. As you might know, the dwarves in the south are very famous for their delicate craftsmanship, and for you, my esteemed guests, we chose the best of the best, things that you would never find anywhere else. I hope they will have something that vibrates, Victor whispered toward Aerith. Bam! Rosette smacked the back of his head. Behave. Sorry, he scratched his head. Damn it, that's why he didn't like to go shopping with his parents. They were no fun. The first item for tonight will be this. A simple necklace made by Ado. The chain is made out of blue gold holding a water frost diamond. Ladies and gentlemen, although it doesn't have system powers, this gem is really good for women and will grant them a cold atmosphere. The auctioneer quickly began to explain. We will start with 190 coins. 200. 220. 230. Victor entered the bid. 240. 250. 255. 260. Victor bid it again. 260 for the gentleman in the VIP balcony. Once. Twice. Sold, the auctioneer announced, then moved to the next object. A ruby red comb inlaid with black gold. Victor bid again, but in the end, he stopped after the price went too high. After that, as the items were presented, he bid every once in a while, sometimes winning and others losing, buying more and more items in the process. It seemed like the real big spenders didn't care about all of those trinkets, so he didn't really face any opposition most of the time. Naga, who seemed to be holding a grudge after what happened at the palace the other day, tried to steal a few from him, but after he raised the price a few times and let her take some stupid stuff at 10 times their price, she could only coincide. Her pockets were way too deep for her to compete with. Why are you spending your money on those trinkets? Lyra, who couldn't hold her curiosity, finally asked. If he bought 1 or 2, she would presume that he wanted to give it to Aerith or Amira, but he had already bought more than 20. Sure, they had some very fine craftsmanship, but that was it. The real stuff will come later, you know. I know. Victor sighed, relaxing a bit. It is just that I want to bring a few gifts for my wives when I go back to my original world. And the things here are very suitable. What? Lyra asked in shock. Yes, I guess mother-in-law didn't tell you, but my master has a way to send me back, and you can come too. We already know that. Lyra stopped him. Rosette told them about this while Victor was downstairs. And they have already discussed it. What I am asking about was your wives. What about them? He asked with a frown. What a strange question. You were already married? She asked. Aerith was also looking at him for an answer. She had been wanting to ask him about this for a while now, but didn't find a good chance to bring it up. Thankfully, her nosy little sister, Lyra, did it for her. Rosette, who knew about the family rules on the other hand, had a deep frown as she glanced at him. Of course. Why wouldn't I? He asked as if he was offended. Victor. How old are you? Rosette asked. 18, he answered. 18 was always the right answer unless being caught with a minor. So you have just awakened, she pondered. Yeah, about 4 months ago, he nodded. How many wives did you say you have? She asked. He just used the plural form when he said wives after all. I didn't say. Comma. How many do you have? Rosette almost smacked him again. Victor frowned as he began to count on his fingers. Officially. Should be 11 with Aerith, though there are others who can be counted as such. HSSS, Erdith, who was beside him, gasped, grabbing his hand and intending to pinch the life out of it. She finally realized what the number 11 in her status meant. The bastard. Since when did the family allow an heir to marry that many women? Rosette asked in a cold voice, clearly not pleased. Thankfully there were no death fate threads, so Victor didn't go defensive. It was supposed to be one, but the fiancés was changed at the last moment and another one was added for some reason, so I used the chance to turn it into a grand wedding. What is the difference between marrying 2 and 10 at the same time? He chuckled as if he did a great thing. No one else laughed. Anyways, the family was only going to approve of the main 2, but since I tricked them and performed a system marriage, they had to acknowledge every one of them as an official wife. He shrugged. It is an obscure rule in the family. Oh, Rosette frowned. Right, there was such a rule in one of the old family court cases she read when she was young. It was hidden away in an old book in one of her master's private collections. She was sure she burned it up, but it seemed like there were other copies. All the girls kept glaring at him, including Meryl, who bit her lip. They totally disregarded the auction that was happening in the background. What's with the awkward atmosphere? Can a man marry many women here too? He asked as he looked around. It's not like I forced any of them. I am sure you didn't, Lyra, who was glaring at him with hostility, spat. I did not, okay, he clarified. On the contrary, there was supposed to be a 12th wife, but she was a little against it and some bastard broke into the wedding and took her away. I was understanding enough that I didn't stop them. Someone broke into your wedding? Rosette asked in surprise. And Theodore didn't kill him? Victor paused, wondering what kind of image his stupid father gave Rosette. He couldn't, that guy was from the heavenly sect. The son of the patriarch or something, he said in a low voice. He wanted to kill me too, but one of my buddies sacrificed himself to protect me. Rosette, who knew about the heavenly sect better than anyone there, paused and then sighed. Silver Sun. I see, she pondered as she squeezed her fist. You were lucky. Father said the same, Victor replied as he frowned. He really wanted to know Rosette's backstory, but it would be too awkward to ask. Maybe he needed to find a chance to go have a drink with her. After that, the balcony remains a little silent. Well, not really. As the auction downstairs proceeded, Victor quickly found a few things he wanted and began to bid again. Other than him, Massel also bought a very delicate ring that was clearly intended to be given to Meryl as he was looking at her fingers while bidding for it. Aerith and Lyra, on the other hand, were like their mother, totally not interested in those trinkets. They had a lot of those things at home and they were saving their coins for the real stuff. Excellent. Thanks to your patronage, the first collection was fully sold off, the auctioneer suddenly announced as the first few trays were carted away, making everyone, including those who were not interested, look down. Now let's start with the second collection. Things will get a little heated up as we have a batch of very rare materials, she announced. Everyone sat straight and squinted their eyes as the second cart entered the stage with many trays on it. A blue leather-bound book. The auctioneer took it and opened it up at a random page to reveal something that made many maidens blush as the men beside them jumped to take a closer look. This book is titled The Most Beautiful. It offers intricate paintings of some very beautiful women in exquisite poses. The author is unknown, with only the letters V, V, W written on its first page. As you may see, the drawing technique in it is so delicate that no signs of a brush or printing plates could be seen. We will start with 50 coins. 60. 70. 120. 130. Ouch. Why did you hit me? Victor asked his violent mother-in-law. Why were all the women around him turning rabid? Did it have something with his personality? That one is yours, isn't it? Rosette asked as she used her other hand to cover Emirat's eyes. No comment, Victor looked away only to be welcomed by Aerith's eyes glaring at him. What? She didn't answer, choosing to look away and focus on the stage below. She was clearly still annoyed by the fact that she was the 11th wife. Pervert. 299. Sold. After an intense betting battle between perverts, the book was quickly sold to a fat gentleman in one of the lower balconies. This world really lacked quality materials. Victor really regretted not having some of his late brother's magazine collection with him. He would have really made a fortune using them. Next we have the scroll about the noble lineage kingdom of Plora that was destroyed 380 years. The auctioneer quickly started with the next item. Victor, who gave it a quick glance, casually dismissed it. He was not interested in such stupid things. After that, similar things like paintings, treasure maps, and heritage documents began popping up one after another. Next we have a map of the Death Gorge's lower terrain near the desert bridge. Although it is very risky, according to the seller, he used it to successfully fish for treasures down there using a long rope and a hook. 10. 20. 25. 40. Lyra bid it this time. 45. Naga bid it against her. Don't bid anymore, Victor suddenly stopped Lyra. Why? Rosette asked. It is fake, Victor. Although most of the map on the table downstairs was covered, from the exposed part he could tell it was not real. And even if it was, there would be nothing down there. Not anymore. You know about the gorge? Rosette asked. I can't say. My master would scold me. Victor looked away. Oh, Rosette nodded. Lyra frowned for a moment, then stopped bidding. Now, the documents collection is over. We will take a 30-minute rest, then proceed with the rare raw materials collection afterward. After 3 more items, the auctioneer announced. Feel free to try our cuisine at the cafeteria if you feel like it, she added before bowing and walking off stage. Wow. That was intense, Massel said as he finally relaxed in his seat. He always wanted to attend this auction. In the second round, he tried for a few documents about elven lineage but could only get one due to the other elves downstairs bidding against him. But it was worth it. You haven't yet seen the start of it, Rosette smirked. They have already been here for 2 hours and the auction has just started. Most of the really good stuff hadn't made it to the stage yet. The competition will be very intense later. Blood might be shed. Yeah, Aerith sighed as they could hear a knock on the balcony's door. Enter, Rosette commanded in an authoritative voice. Moments later it was opened and a few maids entered with trays full of refreshment that they began to place on a long table at the back of the balcony. The treatment here was not bad, but this was to be expected as they will probably have to stay here for another 7 to 8 hours going deep into the night. That's why this grand auction was only held annually. Victor was about to go grab something to eat when 2 new trays were pushed in. They held the stuff the occupiers of the balcony won. Please pay up before taking the items, one of the maids who walked in after them said as she presented 2 red jade tablets. One for Massel and the other for Victor. Sure, Victor said, putting his hand on the tablet. Payment tablet. 9,912 coins. Do you want to pay? Victor pressed yes. Thanks to all the gems he got from Deathgorge and sold to the system, he was now a billionaire. Even his old piggy bank's fortune paled in contrast. Watching him pay up, Rosette didn't care to ask where his money came from. She just inspected his expression, noting that he was not that stressed. Thank you, the maid said, taking the tablets that turned white back before gesturing to the trays. If you may, leave the trays outside after you finish taking your goods, she said before bowing down and walking out. Victor slowly walked to his tray and began to inspect the trinkets that were each placed in a suitable box. He bought a total of 49 items. He really had a lot of girls around him after all, and buying them gifts was a must. Under Lyra's curious eyes, he began taking the stuff one by one. After giving them a quick check, he put them in his ring, leaving only 3 things on the tray. The first one was a simple necklace with a small flower pendant. It didn't look impressive, but Victor could tell that it was made from a material called obsidian raindrop. It was a very hard material and hard to work with. He took it, weighing it in his hand, then turned and walked toward Amira, who was watching curiously. He bent on one knee and then put it around her neck. This is for you. Ah, she blushed as he wrapped his hands around her neck, locking the pendant's chain. Thanks, she said, looking down shyly at the pendant on her chest as soon as he let go. She really looked super cute. Tisk, Lyra clicked her tongue and then paused as she watched Victor grab her arm and put a bracelet around it. What the This thing is made out of blue gold and I thought you would like it. It really matches your eye color, he said, making her blush a little. I don't want. Consider it a gift from your brother-in-law, he interrupted as he flashed her a smile. He had been really training on how to do those lately. They were surprisingly very useful. As expected, pretty things should be worn by pretty girls. It is not like I couldn't buy it by myself or anything, she said as she looked away, blushing a bit. I guess I will just accept it. Rosette, who watched, was squinting her eyes at him and sneering. This guy was so damn good at scamming little girls. Well, she really didn't mind it as his relationship with Lyra was clearly improving, but it made her a little concerned if he had any other hobbies that went beyond that. Aerith, on the other hand, who was still frowning, looked toward the last box left on the tray, biting her lip and not knowing what to expect. Well, Victor didn't disappoint as he opened it to reveal a golden bangle inside. It was clearly very old yet intricate, inlaid by 12 pretty gems around it. He grabbed it and held it in his hand for a bit as if weighing it. Ah, Aerith was disappointed. It was too small for her to wear. It should be for Amira, right? No. This is for you, Victor said, presenting it to Aerith. Ah, she frowned, taking the intricate jade bangle and looking at it. This thing was one of the most expensive things in the auction earlier, and Victor had to fight with Naga over it and ended up paying 2,100 coins for it. I will find a chain to hang it around my neck, she said with some disappointment. Well, at least he got something for her. Idiot, Victor said, grabbing it from her hand. This is to be put up there, he added, pulling away Aerith's turban and putting it on her horn, letting it slide down. It fits perfectly. Everyone froze. Both Lyra and Rosette tensed up. Although Aerith didn't show it, she was very sensitive about things regarding her horn. When she was young, if anyone were to make fun of it, they would end up with some serious injuries. Aerith really got angry for a moment there. But moments later, she felt a strange sense of clarity. The gems around it have natural demonic energy purifying properties, Victor whispered, telling the truth. Although it is weak, being close to your head, I thought it might have some calming effects on you. Aerith blushed a bit. She didn't expect him to be still thinking about her situation. Really? The auctioneer didn't say anything about that. Lyra, who couldn't read the atmosphere, asked. She told you that those gems were rare, didn't she? He shrugged. In fact, the knowledge about them was something my master taught me. He used a couple of them on demons restraining shackles, he clarified. In fact, this knowledge was something he got from the old artificer soul he ate months ago. That guy was an expert in demonic materials and he really didn't expect to find such a fine thing here. They were really one of the materials used in demonic shackles, but to create a fully functioning one, many other rare minerals were required. Now you can restrain your horniness, he whispered. Bam. Ouch. Aerith smacked his head. Pervert, she said as she turned and walked away to grab a plate, skipping a bit. I forgive you, she whispered. Thanks, I guess, he whispered as he scratched his head. Why did all the women around him turn violent? Rosette, who watched them reconcile, almost clicked her tongue. He was not only good at scamming little girls, it seemed, but in a way he was a perfect fit for the rigid Aerith. She could only shake her head and look to the side where Masel was giving Meryl the ring he bought, telling her that he thought she might like it and that it meant absolutely nothing. Although Rosette was not really against this elf marrying her daughter, she needed to cut him off from that Sun Lord first. And really had to find a way to straighten up that crooked elven brain of his, and to tell the truth, she had no idea how to do all of that. Maybe she should consult Victor's master about it. Akaichi. Sorry for the delay, next chapter tomorrow. Probably. Thanks for the donations. Enjoy. Chapter 476, The Auction House Mayhem 3. Lady Theta, one young man shouted as he returned to the makeshift survivors camp constructed in a safe zone. Despite its relatively small size, it was very crowded. What, the teenage girl who was busy teaching a few youngsters how to use a sword turned to ask as she gestured to them to try the technique she had just explained. I got this drop from a rat on the upper floor, he said, smiling a bit while scratching his head as he showed her a golden pendant. It looked very fancy. Didn't I teach you to keep your loot to yourself? She frowned and asked. Only show them to trusted appraisers or merchants. But is it okay if it is you, right? He said, pouting a bit. This girl was not falling for his usual rhetoric. Not even me. Since you agreed to join this camp, you have to follow the rules, she argued. If this place was not managed by me but by some hooligan, you might have died for trying to look cool. This thing looks precious, keep it safe until you can appraise it. Can I keep it with you? No. The rules are the rules. Now go report to Ruby and get some rest, she dismissed him as she turned to the youngsters and began to fix their fighting stances. Those kids were on a school trip and just happened to be ushered into the square to hear that speech before the explosion happened. He could only sigh as he watched her disregard him. Don't despair, lad, someone suddenly put his hand on his shoulder and said, startling him, it was the uncle who usually guarded the safe zone's entrance. You are not the first one to try to hit on her and fail. At least you approached her amiably enough. Some few others who didn't know how to keep their hands to themselves ended up with broken noses, he said, consoling him. The young man sighed. Do you know her origin? He asked. She is not from our city, that's for sure, and I suspect she might not even be from our country, the old man said. And the girls around her have a very rusty atmosphere around them. Some of them have this strange accent. They knew each other before coming here? Most likely. Since you were rescued late, you might not know when we found ourselves here, it was her and the others who saved us and then guided us to the safe zone, telling us about the truth of the world. They might have something to do with our situation, but I can't prove it. Oh, the young man nodded. This uncle was clearly some kind of intelligence officer or security official before coming here. By the way, did you happen to meet a veiled girl or a tall, handsome young man who looked like a beggar? The young man asked. You already asked everyone about them, right? Are they relatives? The nice uncle asked back. Kinda. They are my cousins, the young man sighed. We came together to hear the speech and then were separated, he added in a sad tone. If they are here and manage to survive, they will appear sooner or later. The old man sighed. Never lose hope, lad. Yeah, the young man nodded, then after thinking for a moment he took out the pendant and gave it to the old man. You look like a man who knows how to get things done. How about this, keep an eye on them for me and this is your payment, he said, handing it to him. The old man scowled at the young man, then took the pendant and put it in his pocket. Sure, he replied. At the same time, in a very luxurious auction house in another world full of elves and perverts. Aunt Rosette, I have been meaning to ask you about something, Victor, who finished grabbing a bite, suddenly asked as he returned to his seat. What? Rosette, who was frowning while watching Meryl remove the fish bones from Masel's plate, asked. You know that my class is a merchant, right? He asked. Yes, and I couldn't help but notice that the system store in this world is not functional. I could only sell gems, there's no system storefront or even player's marketplace. Oh! Rosette rounded to face him. First let me ask you this, how is the situation in our original world? She was not sure about that. The player's market store is mostly empty and only displays some items on rare occasions due to the lack of merchants, but the system store is fully functional despite it only offering standard pills and talismans, he responded. I see, she sighed. Well, I'm not sure myself, but I can make a guess. Okay. According to her lordship, many things about the system have something to do with the world's rules. Those should be set by someone who has an emperor rank, but in this world, this doesn't exist now. She pondered. There might be something like that limiting the store here, she guessed. The system has to follow the world rules? Victor asked with a frown. This felt strange, but on the other hand, he had seen how it was locking Shaun's fate power to a rank. I don't really know, her lordship only told me that the system was not something someone in my level should be concerned about. I see, Victor frowned. Now that he knew about concepts and sparks, he was very intrigued about the system that managed all this. It seemed like there were different levels of control to it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, the auctioneer who at some moment returned to the stage suddenly announced. This time it was no longer the half-elf lady but a dashing young man in a blue suit. This caused all the men to visibly show their annoyance, contrary to the women in the crowd who began to shoot him flirtatious looks. This auction house really knew how to agitate its guests. We will start with the third collection, rare minerals and materials, he announced as 3 trays full of jade boxes were carted to the stage. Many of the VIPs who were relaxing at this moment finally showed some interest. We will start with the first item, he declared, taking the first box and opening it to reveal a delicate pearl. This pearl was acquired from the belly of a demon dragonfish. We believe it was the result of it foraging in the northern forbidden lands, he began to introduce. Our appraiser has confirmed that it will be very suitable to be used as a medium for soul artifacts. We will start with 5,000 coins, he said, declaring the start of the real auction. 6,000. 7,000. 7,800. 8,100. Victor watched with interest. This thing was really precious, but for him it was pretty much useless. He already got a ton of materials from the gorge, and between them he already had a few bigger pearls. He just was pondering if he should ask if it could vibrate. As if feeling something wrong, Rosette shot him a warning glare. Oops. This woman had some very keen intuition. The pearl was quickly sold to some elf lady, allowing the auctioneer to move to the next item that made many squint their eyes as the wooden box opened and the item inside was revealed. It is a dragon bone. We can't be sure of its origin, but our appraisal had already confirmed that it came from primordial times, belonging to an adult 4-winged mist dragon. Oh, the crowd was in an uproar immediately. This thing was very rare. The only one who was not amazed was Massel, who turned to look at Victor. This bone was the same one he bought at the auction at Border Town. This is, he asked. Yeah, the master made me sell it here, Victor shrugged. Rosette, who heard him, just raised one eyebrow. Do you have one more? She asked. My master does. He usually uses them to bait demons, Victor said. Do you want me to ask for one for you? Some really good weapons can be made out of it, she said before looking away, hinting to him that he should make such weapons as gifts. Indeed, I will tell him the next time he appears. Victor nodded before turning to the stage. The dragon bone was sold to an old weaponsmith for a whooping 450,300 coins. He had no idea that he was just marked. By more than one person, that was. Next we have, the auctioneer smiled as he slowly continued to present the items one by one. This time Rosette bid, buying more than 3 rare minerals that she needed. All of them had something to do with storms, wind, and rain, so Victor was suspecting she was trying really hard to figure out that concept thing. He could only sigh as he suddenly felt a tug on his pants. Turning to the side, he noticed that Amira, who was grabbing hard to him, had her eyes pinned on a strange-looking bone that was held by the auctioneer using a glove. This item is an old giant's tailbone. Although it is very rotten, our appraiser had confirmed that it can still be used for grinding weapons. He also suggested that it might be useful to research it as a poison source, as it seems to have a very bad effect on living organisms. Victor squinted looking at it. Giant tailbone. Rotten 98%. The appraisal only showed its name and state. Nothing more. But on it he felt a familiar breath, the same one he felt in the Death Gorge. Victor did ask Amira about this a while back, but she could only tell him that it was something that she felt she needed, like her body was hungry for it. She couldn't explain it all. We will start with 1,200 coins. 1,300. 1,400. Victor quickly bid as he grabbed Amira's hand, gesturing to her to keep quiet. She nodded as she relaxed a bit. 1,500. 1,600. 1,750. After a few more bids, Victor managed to secure it for 1,880 coins. Don't let anyone know that you were the one who wanted it. I will give it to you later, Victor whispered to her, using his disguise to make sure no one heard him. She nodded. Thank you, she whispered. He just ruffled her hair as the next item was brought forward. It was an egg of some kind of monster. Victor just gave it a quick glance and lost interest as it didn't vibrate. Suddenly his eyes caught something from the side. He turned and noticed an old man who walked into the hall from the back door, breathing hard as if he had arrived here in a hurry. He was looking around frantically before asking an assistant about something. Hearing the answer, he calmed down a bit and quickly found a seat in the back. It just happened to be right next to Kira's. What kind of coincidence was that? Victor was about to dismiss him, but for some strange reason he couldn't. It was as if the man had something wrong. Wait, why didn't he appraise him until now? Victor gasped. Why the fuck was every cell in his body telling him to ignore this very suspicious man? Why were his eyes automatically darting away each time he wanted to inspect him deeper? Is there anything wrong? Aerith, who was by his side, asked. Just wondering, why is that egg not vibrating? Ouch. Rosette, the only one on the balcony who understood what he meant, naturally smacked his head. Behave. Aerith glared at him for a second, wondering why would he want an egg to vibrate, then thinking about it for a second she decided to turn back and continue observing the auction. She knew better than to ask this pervert. Lyra felt the same and decided to ask her mother later. She was in for a spanking. Victor just rubbed his head as he acted naturally. He didn't want to alarm anyone as he slowly forced himself to look at the old man again and appraised him. Name, Romulus G. Sola, Ziffer the Great. Level, 987. Class, Dark Magician, SSS. Abnormal status. Most inconspicuous, SSS, Talisman effect, 70 seconds hours. Death poisoning, S fake. Sunlord's minor blessing S. Demonic seed X hidden. World system node connection access permission hidden. Authority 9 plus 90. Health 22,000. Stamina 22,000. Mana 25,000. Strength 2,200. Agility 2,200. Intelligence 2,500. Luck 10. Charm 10. Order 121. Skills: Darkness Shroud SSS. Dark Side SSS. Disguise SS. Demonic Sense SS. Blindness S. Appraise S. Poison Resistance S. Soul Extract S. Soul Defense S. Soul Seer A. Dark Sphere A. Darkness Arrow A. Corpse Bomb A. Dark Vision A. Archery A. Pole Arts A. Magic Resistance A. Magic Compatibility A. Pain Tolerance A. Cold Resistance A. Stun Resistance A. Darkness Resistance A. Fire Resistance A. Survival B. Torture Arts B. Martial Arts C. All Arts D. Cooking Art D. Cannibal E. Sadist F. Cross-dressing F. Bloodline. Sun Elf AA 100%. Equipment: Sacrificial Doll X. Zifr's Teleportation Cloak SSS. Status Protection Talisman SSS. Escape Talisman SSS. Ring of Doom SSS. Warning Earrings SS. Black Sun Staff SS. Great Hidden Storage Ring S. Royal Insignia S. Cursed cannot be removed. Quick Boots A. Storage Ring B. Fate. Fate's Power C. Define Fate, serve the Sun Lord until death A. Destiny List, 10 order points to unveil. A. What? Victor almost gasped again. Zif was here. Shit. He did put in the possibility of the guy appearing, but it was a very small possibility as he expected him to send someone instead. And what was with his status? What the fuck was that system node access thing? No idea. Looking at the guy's fate, things became stranger. Serve the Sun Lord until death? Whose death? Did this guy work for the Sun Lord? What kind of twisted plot was this? Not being able to resist, Victor activated the Destiny List. Destiny List. World set, serve the Sun Lord until death A. Self set, be a very good servant. Self set, fool the stupid Sun Lord again to kill the Storm Lord, then eat him. Self set, disable this world's system node S. Self set, relight the fated devil spark, then use it to become a demon lord S. Self set, break the seed hidden in my soul and restore my true demonic body S. Self set, devour this world S. Self set, devour what's beyond this world S. A. H. Demon Lord? Victor began to really sweat. This plot was far beyond anything he expected. He knew the spark was important, but did it make demon lords? Like in video games? Wait. The system was already strange, and the hero class did exist, but come on. Demon lords too? Thinking about it, Victor was in a real shock. Too troublesome. He was making guesses before, but it seemed like the Sun Lord was really an idiot, probably being led by the nose by this demon. Shit. His original plan here was to use the chaos Zifr would make to move on to his targets. The first one was to steal the dramatic hammer from Lazarus. He had a really good idea about how to use it, and he suspected that it might be the fate treasure Lily told him about. The second was to rob a few things from the auction. Who wouldn't like more free stuff? The third was to find a way to cure the Storm Lord. If he were to just give her the fake talisman, she would not want him nearby when she used it, as she was not an idiot and would naturally suspect foul play. That would be troublesome, as it wouldn't really work without him around. The problem was now that the situation had become 100 times more dangerous, especially with all the treasure Zifr had on him. This guy was like a tank. And would that Storm Lord really dare to appear if she knew Zifr was here? No. Wait. She didn't need to know. What if he were to try the same game he did with Tangerine the Great and frame the guy? Thinking about it, Victor dismissed it. He had no idea if this demon was able to restore his original body quickly. Escalating the situation was a bad idea. Aerith and Rosette would definitely be pulled into the battle, and he didn't want to see that, as he might have to reveal his true power to save them, and that's a big no. He should stay in the shadows. He needed to make things big, but just enough to make that woman make a move. Yes, the only thing he could really count on at the moment was Zifr's unwillingness to be discovered. This guy was definitely playing the long game, scheming something that involved the system itself. Then, the question was, how the hell would he be able to pull all that off and achieve all his goals at the same time? Troublesome. Extra troublesome. Many things needed to be tuned, like an orchestra playing a symphony, and he needed to play the role of the conductor, a hidden conductor. How the fuck was he going to do that? What's wrong? Aerith, who had been keeping tabs on Victor, asked again as she noticed his strange silence. Just wondering if it was worth it, he said absent-mindedly. What? That black wind tree bark? She asked about the thing everyone was betting on. Blushing a bit. This is useless for you. You already have everything needed, she whispered as she looked away, the blush reaching her ear. This thing was for men with problems with their little brothers. If Victor were to use it, the older of the brothers would be reversed. Hee, Victor chuckled, then paused. He had everything he needed? Right? There was still that thing. Looking at Zifr's status, he could slowly formulate a plan. It would be risky, but if played correctly, nothing bad would happen. It is risky, but... He slowly began to smirk. Ouch! Rosette smacked him. Stop thinking about dirty things. He was shocked. He was really thinking about dirty things. This woman's intuition was amazing. Akaichi, sorry for the delay, coming up with schemes is hard. Enjoy. Chapter 477, The Auction House Mayhem 4. Sorry, master. I couldn't get any info. George bowed in front of Theodore, who sat in his mansion's secure room reviewing some top-secret documents. Even you couldn't do it? Theodore lifted his head and looked at his trusted butler in shock. Yes, George replied. I lost contact with the flame Ifrit I summoned for some reason, but the surveillance team reported nothing abnormal at that time. Oh, it was during a 30-minute blackout period when young Master Max took a prostitute to a motel room and he reported her dead afterward. George frowned. The surveillance team's report only included him being involved in some kind of rough activities. Some kind of sacrificial ritual? Most likely, George replied. I checked the family records, and although his butler managed to hide it quite well, I did find out that Max might have quite a history with such incidents with prostitutes. He added, about 1 or 2 casualties per month. Oh, Theodore's frown grew deeper as he let go of the document in his hand and looked up, lost in thought. He was clearly disturbed. Although it was common in the family for every heir to do whatever they wanted to normal people, Max's actions meant that he was either a psycho or worse. A traitor. After that, he called Victor, wanting to meet him. It is as if he had been given some kind of instructions. George continued with his conclusion. Oh, any idea what this is about? No, as he didn't explain anything on the phone, but Axel should tell us everything as soon as he finishes with him, George replied. Then let's wait and see. Let the men be more careful not to reveal anything. I want to see what kind of game he will be playing, Theodore said with a cold voice. His future actions will seal his fate. He was super pissed. The only thing he hated more than getting cuckolded was being betrayed. No wait, those two were on the same level. Anyway, if Max was really doing this on purpose and if he were to try something to harm the family, Theodore was planning to be the one to act and finish him off. Understood, George said just as someone knocked on the door. Enter. Theodore paused for a moment, then commanded, allowing his faithful maid Adele to enter and bow courtesy while lifting the tips of her fluffy maid uniform to reveal her fishnet stockings. George clicked his tongue as he looked away. He never liked this woman's overemphasis on protocol or the way she seduced his master on every occasion. Is there anything? Theodore asked, noticing Adele's disturbed face. Young Master Max, he got into a fight with young Master Axel and now both of them are in the police station. Eh? Ladies and gentlemen, now we will take a brief rest then begin the next collection, the auctioneer announced with a grave voice, then turned to leave. That was really intense, Victor commented. He was not really watching, but he wanted to appear as if he were. You have no idea, wait until the real artifacts make an appearance later, Aerith commented. Oh, Victor nodded as the door knocked and a few carts were brought into the balcony containing the stuff that they bought. Victor casually grabbed the things he bet for, including the tailbone meant for Amira. What do people downstairs do to get their stuff? He asked as he paid. Those guys didn't have the luxury of having their stuff carted in. They can go pick them up from the office on the 3rd floor during the rest, or they can wait until the end to take them from the 1st floor where safe exits can be provided, the maid who accepted Victor's payment clarified. Oh, he nodded as he put the final touches on his plan. Thank goodness we are VIPs here, he said. I don't want to mingle with commoners. The maid nodded with disgust. She hated those types of guys the most. By the way, where's the restroom? He asked again. At the end of the corridor on each floor, there is one, the maid, fulfilling her duty, explained. Good. I will return in a bit. I need to take a dump, he told everyone. You don't have to explain that. Rosette dismissed him as she inspected an orichalcum or that she bought. I do, my wife is very jealous, he clarified, making Aerith shoot him a glare. Amira, stay with Aerith and behave, he told the little girl. Amira nodded, frowning a bit as she understood his other instructions that no one else heard. Giving everyone on the balcony a glance, he slowly walked out and casually made his way toward the restrooms. There were 5 on this floor. He quickly chose the deepest one, and as soon as he entered and made sure he was alone, he took out Yas, one of the 2 elf girls, from the cauldron. Master, she asked with a blush as she noticed that she was in a very cramped space with her body pushing on her master. Shush, he said as he put his hand on her head, making her slowly change shape into him. Everyone will now see you as me. Stay here and act as if you have bad constipation. Don't leave no matter what you hear. Even if this building collapses, I will return to get you later, he said. Ah, she didn't expect that. I understand. You can use the soul perfume if needed, just focus on not getting discovered, he added. Understood, she nodded obediently. Nodding, he gave her a kiss on the cheek and phased out through the door. Remembering the auction house's layout from his exploration when he first came here, he made his way toward the backstage. As he approached his target, the corridors became heavily guarded, but thankfully the mean-looking guards there were kind enough to totally ignore him as if he was made out of air. 5 minutes later, he entered the so-called vault where a huge-bodied old man was supervising the treasures that were to be sent to the stage and those that were already sold and needed to be exchanged. He was also explaining what needed to be said about each item to a dashing-looking young in a formal red-colored suit. This guy was probably the next auctioneer. Victor watched the busy atmosphere there for a moment, finally confirming that the old man was the highest authority in this place, with everyone calling him the supreme manager. He appraised him. Name, Riz Millard. Level, 641. Class, Winter Merchant, A. Abnormal status. Stormlord's Minor Blessing, SS. Authority, 61 plus 3. Bloodline. Halfgiant, A 100%. Equipment. Dragon Scale Armor, AAA. Protection Talisman, B. Storage Ring, C. Supreme Array Control Token, D. Fate. Fate's Power, B. Defined Fate, Death by Impalement by Zafar the Great, A. Destiny List, 10 order points to unveil. Victor frowned. This guy was a little too strong for him to take him out without killing or alerting others. But what caught his interest was the Supreme Array token. He had already noticed the said array when he first walked in, and now he found the way to control it. His first thoughts were to steal it, but it was risky. Too risky. There might not be any need to do that though. Victor was really feeling nervous. For the first time in his life he was going to pull a great scam, and this time the field was not his, so he had to use everything he got to make it work without anyone suspecting him. It was as dangerous as mixing gunpowder with fire and wishing them not to cause an explosion. In fact, all his preparations this time were for that reason. It was as if he was working against his own scam. Thinking for a moment, Victor suddenly smirked as he eyed the auctioneer, who finished getting his instructions, then nodded and headed to check on the items of the next collection. They included a little metallic inconspicuous box that no one could open. All that was left were the final touches. In a certain dungeon that smelled and looked like gigantic sewers, a huge rat the size of a house screamed in pain and shock and then fell down as a crimson-haired girl slid across using her sword to slit its throat. Not one drop of blood stuck on it, nor on her, as each one of her movements was flawless. "Sis, that was amazing," Mana exclaimed as she watched Mona sheath her sword. "When did you learn that move?" she asked in reverence. She had been training in the sword for the last 6 months, and she could barely follow her sister's moments. Hell, even the giant rat that had just died was having difficulty doing that. "It just came to me," Mona replied calmly as she looked at her artifact sword, squinting her deep eyes at it. This thing about being a player was really magical. How can someone like her, who never wielded a sword before, do it so naturally? Also, seeing her level go up so fast felt unreal. "Sis, I really envy you," Mana sighed. "If I could be as cool as you, I would have been more useful to the young master." "Why do you care about his opinion of you this much?" Mona asked. "And isn't he your husband? Why do you keep calling him young master?" "Out of habit." Mana pouted with a blush. It had become a kind of role play for her and her sister at the moment, and her husband really liked it when they called him like that. "Victor is the coolest though. He saved our lives that day and stood for us against his family to make us his wives. And although he appears a little perverted, he really cares about his own people deeply. One time I was really hurt in a dungeon, and you should have seen the look on his face," Mana said with reverence. Mona shook her head. She knew that love-struck look on her sister. She had seen her on some of her female friends, and they all ended badly when that guy. "Wait." She paused. "Who was that guy again?" "What? Why?" "Ah, right? Mr. X?" Mona screamed and let go of her sword as she held her head and fell to the floor, grimacing in pain. SAS Mana ran quickly to her side and pushed a healing and an antidote pill in her mouth without asking. It didn't help as Mona screamed. "No. Never again," she shouted as if fighting something, then startling the dismayed Mana, she reached and grabbed her sword, pulling it out of its old sheath again. She flipped it and inserted it in her own eye without hesitation. "SAS," Mana yelled in shock as she watched her sister push the sword into her own head and then, while screaming, pull it out again before collapsing to the ground with blood gushing out of her eye. On the tip of the sword, a black-looking bird hatchling was squirming and screaming in pain before dying. Moments later, it evaporated into smoke. "Why is Victor late?" Meryl, who watched the next stage of the auction start, suddenly said. "Probably doing something perverted," Lyra smirked. "Lyra," Rosette scolded. Aerith stood up. "Leave him be," Rosette said to her. "If he were to make trouble, it will be all recorded by the auction house's array. You will be able to use it later to rein him in." Aerith frowned. "You were the one who was shunning him," Rosette added. "You should have expected him to grow impatient." "I know, but it is okay. He might just be having constipation for all we know," Rosette says. "Think of it as a test for him." Aerith still didn't sit down. "I want to have a look," she said, turning and quickly leaving. "I will come with you." Amira jumped to her feet and quickly grabbed Aerith's hand. Aerith nodded and left with the little girl. Rosette could only shake her head as she watched her jealous daughter leave and looked down toward the stage where a young man entered to introduce the next collection they were selling. Rare and mysterious items. "Ladies and gentlemen, we continue our auction. The first item is this black sword hilt. It is completely normal, but for some reason, whenever someone swings it, it screams in pain," he said as he held the hilt and swung it in a random direction. "Kyaa." A lute scream reverberated in the room as the young auctioneer quickly dropped it and shot the assistant behind the stage a glare. The assistant shook his head. "It never acted like this before." "It might be the kind of pain," the auctioneer said awkwardly. "It never did that before. How about we start with 70,000 coins, he asked. "Really? No one wants to explore these things' secrets." Rosette shook her head. Although the item was intriguing, people at this auction who could afford it were at the top of society, and no one of them would risk his reputation for it. It can make normal noises too. Anyone can try it. Maybe it depends on the person, he said, offering it to the audience again while shooting the manager who was telling him that this was against protocol and an apologetic look. Finally, one other guy got the courage to go up and try it. Ah! It was a normal scream for a man getting killed. Interesting, huh? Anyone else? He asked. This time a few people tried it, and the voice, although a little different each time, was still of a man. Thankfully, after many men tried it, one rich guy got enough courage and bet on it, buying it at the starting price. Congratulations, sir. We will move to the next item, the auctioneer said, putting the sword hilt away back into its own box and moving to the side before he picked the next item. This is a coin that only displays a face when flipped despite it having two sides, he said, showing a normal-looking golden coin with a dragon on one face and a phoenix on the other. Anyone care to try it? He asked, clearly nervous after that last incident. One man in the audience nodded, walked to the stage, and tested it. And indeed, when flipped into the air, it only displayed face, the one with the dragon, and no matter what the man tried, it always landed on face. Even if he tried to cheat. Come. Any more people? The auctioneer said, causing a few to go up and try it one by one. I guess dragons are always on top, the auctioneer commented, earning himself a few laughs from the audience as he thanked the last man and gestured for him to go back to his seat as he began auctioning it for 40,000 coins. This time it went for 70,500 before being bought by one of the elven VIPs. As the auctioneer continued, the balcony's door opened and Aerith returned with a blush on her face. Amira was with her. How was it? Lyra asked. He is in the restroom. That mushroom he ate earlier didn't suit his stomach, she spat, looking away. This world's food might cause such things to strangers, Rosette said as she shook her head and continued to watch the auction stage where many strange items were inspected and then auctioned. It was getting more livelier than usual. Inspecting the goods in such a way was a little out of the ordinary, and Rosette had never seen it happen before. But for this collection that contained mysterious objects, it made sense. And it seemed to be working as many people were encouraged to bid after trying the items for themselves. Still, none of that concerned Rosette, as none of those items were something she needed. Many of them were weak artifacts of failed products. They were only important if someone needed them for a specific thing or for research purposes. It was only 30 minutes later that this segment came to an end, with the final items being 3 boxes that were brought in on carts. 2 were very big and ornamented, while the last one was an unadorned metallic one. For some reason, as she watched, Rosette felt that something big was about to happen. Akaichi. Sorry for the delay. This arc is a little hard to write and I am struggling a bit. Thanks for the donations. Enjoy.